Good evening. Today is Tuesday, April 10th, regular board meeting. Members present are Mr. Convertito, Mr. Liu, Mrs. Gerber, Ms. Iacono, Mr. Dwyer, Mr. Fadavine, Mr. Carey, and Mrs. Brand. Will you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? The first item on our agenda is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting for March 13th. May I have a motion that the Board of Education approve the minutes of the regular meeting of March 13th, 2012? Moved by Mrs. Gerber, seconded by Mr. Carey. Any discussion? All in favor? Oh, sorry. Yes, Mr.
Just a
Fadavine.
quick comment.
Sure.
On item number 8, item B, third paragraph,
Yes.
says Mr. Fadavine moved, seconded by Mrs. Brand, to remand this back to the policy committee to incorporate all the changes that appeared before the board this evening. I think the intent was just to refer it back to the policy committee, so I would move to strike to incorporate all of the changes that appeared before the board this evening. Because I don't think the changes appeared before the board that evening.
Okay. Can we offer that as a friendly amendment, or is there any discussion on that? All right, seeing none. We approve the minutes as amended. All in favor? It's unanimous. And any abstentions? One abstention. Thank you. Okay. Reports. Ludlow High School.
At Ludlow, spring sports such as track, lacrosse, and golf have begun, and students are hoping for the best in the upcoming season. Juniors and seniors are getting ready for proms. The junior prom will occur in mid-May, and the senior prom will occur in early June. There will also be 2 presentations at Ludlow this year, one for juniors and one for seniors, given by a teacher who lost both parents and a grandparent in a drunk driving accident caused by a teenager who was drunk at the time. And these programs and discussions are used to kind of give the juniors and seniors an idea about the dangers of drunk driving and are especially intended for prom night. The senior class photo was recently taken, and Battle of the Houses occurred a couple weeks ago, and Webster was the winning house. Internships are coming up, and mid-May is the date of departure. It's May 24th for seniors. 2 groups of students will be going on international field trips during upcoming spring vacation. One group will be going to Spain, and one will be going to China. The music department recently returned from California, where they performed at Disneyland. And the drama club is rehearsing for the spring musical, Beauty and the Beast, and they will perform on April 24th and 25th.
Thank you. Ward?
The third marking period ended last week. Report cards will be distributed to students on April 24th. The FWHS math team is on a roll. They finished second in the Fairfield County Math League and returned from Connecticut State meet at UConn with second place in their division. Kay Nishimara Gasparian had a perfect score and was awarded a $500 scholarship, and he also qualified for the United States Math Olympiad. And Keelan Cosgrove was the top scoring junior. 4 of them were selected to represent Connecticut in the regionals at Penn State in June. This Friday we are having War Day. There will be academic competitions, food and cultural presentations, and activities including Battle of the Houses throughout the day. The drama club is rehearsing for the spring music hall Man of La Mancha. Over 200 ninth graders and their parents attended the 9th grade forum on underage drinking. Spring sports also have begun at Ward. And last week we had a successful badminton tournament. Lots of kids participated in it. And FWHS has welcomed some foreign exchange students from France this week, and they are staying with students that take French at our school. That's it.
Excellent. Mrs. Brand, Board of Health?
Yeah, I actually didn't go to that meeting, so I went to the RTM last night so I could witness the presentation of for our grouping Board of Ed. And Sans Cleary will give me an update, but he hasn't given it to me yet, so it will be coming next meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Convertito, special project.
Special projects, small building committees handling the Sherman School renovation. Going a little slower than we'd hoped. We'd hoped to be in, I think, this Friday. I think that may be delayed as far as the new administrative wing. Once the administrative wing is done, the cafeteria will start. Not much more to report than that.
Mr. Dwyer.
The Building Projects Review Committee has not met since the last board meeting. CES's meeting is this coming Thursday, and so I'll be at that meeting, and we will put on it at a later date.
Mr. Fattabine.
The Stratford Building Committee was postponed once again, and the Transportation Safety Advisors have not had an opportunity to convene because there was no matter, I believe, brought forward.
Mrs. Gerber.
Okay, Parks and Rec actually has met twice since our last meeting. We met on the 21st, and two items of interest were, first, a 24-hour baseball softball marathon that is going to be held at Tom Hayden Field between June 17th and 18th. It's going to be Fairfield American Little League, Fairfield National Little League, and the Girls Softball Association. And this is kind of a community thing where it's all the different teams playing together throughout the course of 24 hours. It's also going to be a fundraiser where players will get sponsors and raise money for will probably be a few different local or baseball-based charities, still to be decided. There was some talk about the players having some say in which charities the money would go to. There were postcards sent out to people who live within the area of Tom Hayden, just to let them know that this will be taking place because the lights will be on overnight. And they were asked if they wanted to come to the Parks and Rec meeting on the 21st of March to voice any concerns. Nobody came, although there were a couple of emails sent that were not in favor of it, and I think one letter to the editor I saw after the meeting. But it was approved, and so that will be moving forward on the 17th and 18th of June. The other issue of interest is in regards to the skate park. On the 21st, the commission voted to close the skate park due to a number of safety concerns. At the time that that vote was taken, Jerry Lombardo was not there because he was at the RTM subcommittee meeting. Afterwards, he asked us to come back the following week to have a special meeting to rescind that vote because he actually had a plan in place that will entail having badges made up for all of the people who use the skate park. They will have to pay a fee, still to be decided. They will have the badges, and someone will be hired to be at the skate park when the park is open to collect the badges and return them when the skaters leave the park. If someone breaks the rules, they will have their badge taken, and they'll have to go down to the Parks and Rec department with a parent to get it back. And there was also some talk about maybe a 3 strikes and you're out type thing. There's still details that need to be worked out, but that is what the plan is moving forward, and it will be discussed more in the April meeting. And that's it.
Thank you. Since our last meeting, the RTM did meet. They did approve all of our capital projects, which was a huge plus for us. I'm very grateful for that. And the Riverfield Building Committee did meet. They voted and decided to move forward with asking the town committees for a $250,000 seed money funding request to get started on that project. I'm not sure which Board of Selectmen agenda that's going to end up on, but they did get the request and I saw it go through, and hopefully that will be on an upcoming Board of Selectmen agenda. And that's it. Mrs. Kennelly.
Policy has been working on the Board of Ed handbook as well as the discipline policy, so the handbook we're hoping to meet later this week, and the discipline discussion I'll just defer until that motion comes before the board.
Thank you.
And SEPTA meets tomorrow.
Excellent. Thank you. Mr. Carey.
I think you've all heard already, but just the short version is the Board of Finance, in their budget vote, put the $250,000 that was removed by the Board of Selectmen back into our budget. They turned some dials on the pension fund as well, but operationally it doesn't change our budget at all. It's actuary play that It has to do with how much we contribute, but it doesn't negatively impact any of our programs or operations. So that's a positive, and the budget moves forward to the RTM. And the discussion began last night on the Board of Ed side, is my understanding. I was unable to attend. PTA Council is currently seeking nominations for the Deanna O'Kiernan Award as well. So if anyone has any input for that, I believe you can get information to the council's website. And that is my report.
Thank you. Mr. Liu, Fairfield Woods.
Thank you. I wasn't able to go to the last one. I was at the previous one, but from the last one's notes, things are going very well. Unfortunately, I don't know if we're going to be open, or the auditorium that's scheduled for an event on April 11th, but it does look like that all the work is going to be completed by May 1st with a closeout beginning in June. So I think the project is coming along very well.
I just had a quick question, Mr. Liu. Do you know if the project's running on budget?
As far as I know, it is, but I know that there's a lot of, as they go through these things, they have to talk with the construction agency, and they have items that the board will, the building committee will say, I didn't think we agreed to this, and the construction say, well, we did this. So there's all this back and forth right now, and I believe they're going through it, and I think they're doing an excellent job because they are going over it with a fine-tooth comb, but from everything I understand, it is going on budget.
Thank you. I kept hearing a bunch of different things and was just wondering what the...
It changes.
Thank you. Dr. Title, your report.
Well, I'm going to cede most of my time to Mrs. Munsell, so you can start working your way up to the podium. On the financial report, which you have in there, just a couple quick updates. One is we're out seeking parent feedback on a pilot on our new elementary progress reports. Anybody can give feedback on that. It's going to be up on the website with a Survey Monkey, so you all can log in and register your thoughts. And there are 3 separate parent meetings set up for that to get parent feedback on that. We have made some progress on the both the Ludlow window project and the Osborne Hill window project. The first selectman turned back the testing, further testing on the Ludlow project to us to do. We've contracted with the environmental firm to do that work, so that work will be starting shortly. We don't expect that to be finished till around May 1st or thereabouts. So when we get that report back, then we get an estimate of what the cost will be to remediate that. Then we can move forward with a funding request. So that's stage 1. So that is moving forward. Osborne Hill is in the same situation. It's a much smaller arrangement. We have a contract in place with an environmental firm to do similar testing at Osborne Hill. Much fewer windows, only a couple styles, relatively small scope. Again, once we get that back, then we can get the remediation costs, bundle that with the window replacement costs, and then move forward with that project, because the Osborne Hill was the only project that didn't get advanced by the selectmen and finance board, and it really was just to wait for this part to finish. So both those projects are moving forward. We don't have anything to move to the town bodies yet till we get the results back. So we are moving ahead on both those fronts. Okay, so on to finances.
Yes, quarterly review.
Quarterly review.
I think I'll make this quick. It's hard to believe there's 3 months, only 3 months left of the fiscal year and 2.5 months of school. In anticipation of the year-end coming, deadlines were set that were staggered throughout the month of April to help people push forward and anticipate their needs through the end of the year. But we will obviously have ongoing expenses for maintenance, special ed, and other central office accounts, and, whatever other emergencies come up. Shortage areas, there have been a few shortage areas identified with maintenance projects. We had some issues with boilers at Fairfield Ward that have been taken care of. They're looking at another issue of with a gym wall at Ward. We've also set aside some money for testing the windows at Ludlow High School. And we've also taken care of the McKinley roof parapet. Another area of shortage was the regular transportation, which I've mentioned before, but transportation in total will be offset by other transportation accounts. We have, the good news is, we have savings in electric due to the favorable town bid, and in staff turnover. We had some additional retirements, and we have some vacancies. And I'd like to mention in particular vacancies with paras. We have some vacancies that we're filling with subs in anticipation of the budget changes that were made next year that will help us, there won't be riffing and there won't be unemployment, that kind of thing. On your detailed pages, you'll notice under personnel, 98% has been expended. There is a large number still remaining there under staff replacement. Everything's kind of consolidated there as other line items are balanced. But that number will be whittled down substantially to cover subs, overtime, additional stipends at the end of the year, and the rest of the hourly wages which aren't encumbered. Under wage and benefit in that category, we have some unsettled contracts that are still, open, and there are other savings from wages that were settled after the budget was approved. Not much under fixed charges, benefits. It's just Social Security is the largest balance there that is spent out as wages are paid. Pupil personnel, although it looks in that category as if it's overspent, we will be receiving additional excess cost funding in May based on updated student information that's filed in March. We did receive the first installment, $1.8 million, which was reflected in this report. So overall, this category is looking good and should be fine for the rest of the year. The school expenses are, all the school support, or school supply, material accounts, sports, that kind of thing, which they'll finish up with in April with their anticipated expenditures. Support areas are more central office, central support areas, professional development, technical, tech network, security, legal, those are all spent as incurred. And then maintenance, as I mentioned, the emergency projects, transportation would be level. Electricity, we have about a 2% at least increase in kilowatt hour usage from what we know already. So it's hard to anticipate moving forward to the end of the year what we're facing, especially in light of the fact that we have about 22,000 square feet that just came online for Fairfield Woods, and we'll have another almost 2,000 square feet at Sherman that'll be coming online the end of this month. So there will definitely be savings in electricity. At this point, it's just hard to determine exactly how much. We expect some savings in heat also because it's been a mild winter. So all in all, we're looking good. Things are fine.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Mrs. Brand?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair to Ms. Mansell, what I did was just look at anything that was an aberration that was significant. One of them was in personnel services, 133, staff replacement. It actually is negative, and I just wondered why, how we got there.
No, that 460, that's budgeted in a negative.
The staff replacement, 133, which it says used negative 10.62.
That's because it's budgeted as a negative.
Okay. That's part of this. Thank you. I appreciate it. The other one was we have textbooks in pupil personnel expense 411 that is 216.67%. Yet we also have it in another place where it's 411, and it's 101.44% on the next page, under support expenses. So we're listing it, and it may be just, I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation, but since it's listed twice, I thought it was worth the asking.
Okay, the textbooks under pupil personnel are just special ed related textbooks. And the ones under support are just ELL. So there's textbooks, and actually under school expenses, the supplies, books, and materials also includes textbooks. So there's various different types of textbook accounts.
And I think the last one I had to do with professional development, where I saw 119.98% at 321. It's under school expenses. And just for future reference, whether or not we're budgeting enough for future costs, if we're not, then we need to take a look at it and make sure that it's budgeted sufficiently to cover whatever we need to be doing in professional development. That was my only thought, because we obviously had a need there. Yeah.
The school expense is, never mind. I was going to say conference and travel, but that's a different category.
Well, no,
but
they're
they do
big
have
percentages, but they're small dollar amounts.
Right.
Right.
What I'm looking at, because I figure if someone else is looking at this from the outside in, if they're going to be looking at it the same way I am and just see some aberrations, and I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation, but it's better to have them here so that it takes it out of the picture, and that's why I'm asking.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Convertito.
If, just through the chair, if we could get an explanation of the structural wall problem with the gymnasium at Worth?
Sal, can you address that? And all, Tom's not available tonight. I don't know if... I don't have the details on that.
Hi. The problem with the wall at the gym is that the composite wall, the inside width of block and the outside width of block, the engineer determined that they're expanding at a different rate, and it's causing a bow in the wall. It's not going to fall down, but it has to be repaired by actually inserting specialized pins to tie them together, because the ties that were originally built don't allow for the differential expansion contraction of the different materials. So it's a latent problem with the construction that's took 30 years to show up. So it's something that we need to address now.
Thank you, Sal.
Thank you, Mrs. Munsell. Okay. Next.
Oh, I just, one more thing under superintendent's
sure.
report, because I know this is my duty. On the legislative front, everything is in flux. As you know, the governor put out this Senate Bill 24, very aggressive school reform proposal. The Education Committee reported out a substantially different version. Some would call it a weaker version. Some might call it a more prudent version. I don't want to characterize it. It was just different. They are now in the discussion phase of what can they get through the legislature this session. The session ends in early May, so by the time we have our next regular meeting, we'll have a conclusion to that. One part that is moving forward, because it isn't legislative, is the teacher evaluation process as a whole is moving forward, because that was done by the State Board of Education. The state is currently out with an RFP for districts to participate in the pilot of that. They're going to select 10 districts across the state. And we're currently considering our options on that, whether we want to throw our hat into the ring for that. There might be some advantages to being in on the ground floor of that whole procedure. Now, what it gets used for down the road, whether it's tied to tenure, certification, pay, et cetera, that's a separate issue. That's the legislative part. But the changes to teacher evaluation are going to happen. So we'll keep you posted. If we decide that we want to try for this, then, you know, we'll have ongoing updates on how it goes. But it's completely new and different. And I have to look at the workload on our staff in terms of whether we want to participate on that or not. But that is moving forward, because that's independent of legislation.
Mrs. Brand?
One quick question. If it were a pilot study, the evaluation you would base and use would be what's already established here, and then you would file? I guess what I'm wondering is, you're doing it, what impact would it have on what we're currently doing?
I'm not sure. Literally, like, 2 days ago, they sent it out, and we don't have a lot of answers to that right now. But I think that, there's a lot of unknowns with the evaluation system, with 45% of it being some sort of a student performance base, half of which could be standardized tests. How to get the measurement right on that is going to be a huge challenge. So it could be a lot of data crunching on our end, as much as teacher evaluation, to see whether it really can work or not. So I don't know, we have a great shot at it anyways, but it might be interesting to watch it evolve right in front of our noses. So if I know more, I'll let you know, but just that's floating around. So if you hear our districts are out there being asked to pilot, we haven't decided yet.
Thank you.
And also, I want to thank you, because you have been sending the board emails and updating it, and I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
The next item is under old business. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the naming of Fairfield Woods Middle School Fitness Center in honor of Mr. Ray Augustino. Moved by Mrs. Brand, seconded by Mr. Carey. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, is there anyone from the public who would wish to address this item and this item only? Seeing none, back to the board. All in favor, please raise your hand. It's approved unanimously. Next item on our agenda, item B, that the Board of Education approve the educational specifications for the Osborne Hill Elementary School window replacement project. Moved by Mr. Carey, seconded by Mr. Convertito. Is there any discussion? Seeing, Mr. Fattabine.
Just one issue, or I'd like to raise again. I would think at some point, maybe in these educational specifications when you're replacing windows, it might be prudent and maybe even advisable to at least have some sort of soundproofing spec that you think would be beneficial in the educational services provided within that school, since it's an educational facility and the town is getting noisier and noisier and it's a fairly congested area. But I think it's just something to think about, that maybe as you do these window replacement specifications, you consider looking into maybe what soundproofing specs may be appropriate or available. I know that the thermal installations may overlap to an extent with the soundproofing, but they are two different things, and you may have some benefits in both areas if you spec it out. But if you don't spec it out, you're not going to get any benefit at all from it, because it's not in there. So that's my only comment I'd like to emphasize, that, maybe just think about in the future, since we're going through the expense of replacing all these windows, it might be reasonable and prudent.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Mr. Dwyer.
I think I raised this at the last time, but I'd like to just confirm a spec that most often is put in here to get the most energy-efficient window is to say that it will be a low E window. And since it doesn't say that in there, is it implied? Will it be in the more developed specs? And can we assume that it will be a low E window to ensure that we reduce our energy footprint as much as possible?
Dr. Title's
yes.
nodding his head yes.
Thank you.
And that's where we can see if we can address the soundproofing as well.
All right, no further comment from the board. Does anybody from the public wish to comment on this item and this item only? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimous. Next item is a recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the UI Energy Opportunities Program, proposed projects at Mill Hill Elementary School and Holland Hill Elementary School. Moved by Mr. Liu, seconded by Mrs. Kennelly. Is there any discussion on this item? Mr. Convertito.
Yeah, I believe I asked at the last meeting if there was an alternative to the four-year finance plan. Did we get any
I believe we
information on
sent out that information in a printed form to the board in a Friday packet shortly after that meeting, and the answer was that there is no option. You can't, the question was, can we pay cash up front and get a discount? The answer was no, but I believe there's some,
Yeah, we did. We got a packet.
we did do some research on that after you raised that question.
Anybody else? Mr. Fattabine.
Thank you. A question on, in looking through the packet, there was a presentation by LED Lighting Solutions. And on the bottom of that presentation, it looks like a PowerPoint-type presentation, it's a number of pages. There's a notice there that says proprietary of LLS confidential. I just want to make sure that everyone got the clearance appropriate from LSS to release this publicly, and that legend is, they've agreed to redact that legend, or that was okay with them. to
They're
divulge
interested
this.
in getting this job, so yes.
Right, that just wanted to
I'll
clarify.
offer as an aside that Mr. Fatabean's a patent attorney.
Right, exactly.
So we like to take
he was a
confidentiality
policy
notices
attorney.
seriously. I'm becoming one of those.
Thank you.
But, and now I'm going to turn to a contract attorney.
No, that's not your area of purview. You're a patent attorney.
I do contracts as well, mostly, but technical contracts, which this, I may qualify. But in any event, I noticed on this PowerPoint presentation, in part of the analysis as to the cost savings, if you look, for example, on page 5 of that PowerPoint presentation by LED Lighting Solutions, there is a total project cost of $62,614. There's utility incentives identified as $23,090 for a net cost of $39,524. Now, the question I have, that when you look at the contract, and you have to refer now to page 10 of the contract for Mill Hill, this is, I believe, right? For Mill Hill, you're going to see on page 10 there that the total project cost of $62,614 is identified, which is consistent with that presentation, but then you're going to find the incentives of $18,920, which is not consistent with that presentation and will result in slightly reduced savings. Now, whether they're material or not, more than likely not material, but the savings will not be quite as, at least based on the contract, as indicated in the presentation. So you have a difference of about $4,000 in net savings. And then a similar case appears for the Holland Hill contract. So I just wanted to bring that discrepancy out and just make sure everyone's aware of the point that the projected savings may not, based on the contract, be as much as projected.
Very fair comment. Is there anybody else? Anybody from the public wish to comment on this item and this item only? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimous. Okay. Sorry, I lost my place. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the elementary math curriculums, grades 3 through 5, moved by Mr. Convertito, seconded by Mr. Dwyer. Discussion from the board. Well, let me first say, did Mr. Wakeman and Mrs. Kataya-Leonard, did you want to have any, I know we had a lot of follow-up questions. Is there anything you wanted to open with, or would you like to
Can we
just?
explain the handouts that are at the table? And we may need Dr. Rosato occasionally for this as well, so we just have 2 seats, but
Right.
I'll get,
rotating cast and character.
all right, I'll give you the floor, and then we'll have board discussion.
Great, we're happy to take questions and provide answers as needed. But we did want to respond. At your places, we provided you with 2 documents in particular. One is a chart that summarizes the CMT student achievement mathematics results from 2006 to 2011.
And are these both available for the public in the back of the room?
They are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So for the last 6 years, including towns, not all towns, but towns that we typically look at when we're referencing our own achievement and work in DERGs A and B. On the chart, you will also see the math resource that is utilized in each one of those towns across the top. So on this chart, we did get numerous questions about what are other towns doing, what are our scores compared to other scores, how are we doing compared to top-performing districts in the state of Connecticut. So we felt that it would be fair to put that all in one chart for you to reference achievement as well as resource utilized by town. The second document that we've provided at request of one of the board members are sample lessons. What's before you is the actual mathematics curriculum. Identifies what students should know and be able to do by the end of a particular grade level. Below that is what we create for teachers, are implementation guides. Those are typically very thick binders by grade level, sometimes multiple binders, and they provide an overview by month, by week, and then by day. And that provides guidance on the instructional model, if you will. And so what we took was 3 samples from a unit of study that references 3 different resources, and that was a request by a board member. Do the lessons refer teachers to specific resources? And you will note at the top of each one of those units of study, or the lesson, the actual specific reference. So those are the documents before you.
Mr. Liu.
Thank you, and thank you for providing this material. If I could just go through some of it with you.
Sure.
On the last page with the grade 4 unit lesson, SFPS 7-2, I'm assuming that's Scott Forsman?
I'm sorry, let me give you the interpretation
Oh,
guide.
please,
Yes.
yeah. The key.
The key, CFLM.
That's
Context for
context for learning
mathematics.
mathematics. That's the, what has been referenced to by board members as the Kathy Fosno units and resources.
I'm sorry, I'm,
If you look
That's
at...
the first one, Mr.
Oh, the first page, okay.
Grade 4,
Okay.
the Unit 7, Lesson 10.
mm-hmm,
All right, and it says materials on the very top, and it says CFLM,
Right.
Teachers Lounge. That's actually the name of the resource that has been published by Kathy Fosno,
mm-hmm.
by Heinemann.
It really is named that. The second resource you'll see is Remainders and Context Problem Sheet. And that is something that is homemade based on research here by our own teachers. And then the third resource, as you are correct, Mr. Liu, Scott Forsman.
Okay. So I had some questions that I believe I sent you, and I want to ask you some of them again tonight, because unfortunately we didn't get a chance to talk in person, but I think it's good that we can do this in public so everybody can hear this together and understand this together. Again, my understanding of having these different books, how, you know, I guess my concern is that do the resources build on one another, given that they are separate books and you've put this together, and how are the embedded skills going to work towards the children learning, given that you're pulling from many different sources?
That's an excellent question. There are 2 parts to this that I'd like to respond to.
Mm-hmm.
One is the curriculum provides the guidance. It's the map that we use to through the units and through the year and we articulate across grade levels.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually the curriculum document, not a resource that is providing our direction. The second part of that is I don't know of any districts that don't supplement or have not supplemented the core or primary resource that they have. You know, we're in a great transition phase right now with the Common Core state standards, but I referenced last time our Scott Forsman text has 700-something pages, and it is not written for Connecticut, it's not written for Fairfield, it's written for everybody, and so not everything matches with what our curriculum is, and so we've needed to supplement as well as all the districts that I'm aware of in the state of Connecticut.
Thank you. One of the just let me just state also, because I know there was some concern. I wasn't here last time, but through the beauty of Fair TV, I was able to watch the meeting and watch it, which in some ways can be fun and
Interesting.
That's not true.
anyway. I won't add to that.
That's not
But
true.
I guess one of the questions was, I know some people had commented on the Forsman book, that it was banned in California, that it's, as to your own admission, was out of date. Why then would we continue to use this book?
The Scott Forsman book is it is a very traditional text, and there's a place for that. We do want kids to practice skills, and the book has skill practice in it, and it can be used very effectively for that. It is one of the resources that we've cited. I also, in the curriculum document, have noted the Context for Learning resource, as well as Van der Waal Teaching Student-Centered Mathematics. So there are a couple of resources to help support that. So the single source is not what we follow. It is really the curriculum document, and these resources support the curriculum document as we move through the year.
But why not just use a different book altogether? Something that would guarantee that we have embedded in the resources the lessons that we're trying to present. There would be unity within how the books are viewed. And, yeah, why?
Can I address that? Mr. Dooley, we'd like to entertain a new text, but we've been advised by state math folks and in our own research conclude that this is not the time to purchase a new text, that publishing companies, all publishing companies are currently revisiting their textbooks and revising and updating them according to the Common Core. So in an effort to be fiscally responsible, we'd like to move forward a curriculum that ensures cohesion. And I'm hearing a concern of cohesion. It's the curriculum document that will ensure cohesion in grades 3, 4, and 5 across 11 elementary schools. And any text we purchase, it is my hope that we will not only use one text from page 1 to 700, that is used as a resource as opposed to the curriculum. So Mr. Wakeman and I would like to come back to the board in a year or two when textbook companies do their work on revising and updating their textbooks, and then do some homework on all, put them all on the table, and consider what best aligns with our curriculum. And that's best practice, is to write a curriculum that will drive instruction, not buy somebody's book who will drive instruction. And no one book will be the magic bullet for us. So we feel confident moving forward to this board in approval of a curriculum with a statement that we'd like to revisit our text in the future to find something that will align with what we expect Fairfield students to know and be able to do.
Thank you. That's a very good answer. I just want to know, I know, so the Forsman book has been out of date for a while, so we have been doing this before, correct? I mean, in the last couple of years, we've been taking parts of the Forsman book and the other books to create for resources based on our own curriculum. Is that correct?
That is common practice with teachers.
Right. Okay. I guess, you know, one of my concerns is I don't particularly think our scores are fantastic, and even though I think you cite an extremely great example of why we wouldn't want to buy a new book right now, it only sort of says to me, though, we're going to be using the same resources as before, even though the curriculum is changing slightly, and we don't know when the new text will come out. So part of me wonders, well, then does that mean our students' learning is only going to be within the range that it was before?
No, it's not. Actually, if I can refer you back to the actual lesson sample that you have.
Thank you.
And if you turn the lesson 13 over to the back side of it.
Lesson 13, yes.
What we're looking at is just a snapshot, or what we've provided for you here is just a snapshot. But if you look at the next notes for next lesson, there has been a great deal of thought and work by teachers on the sequencing and looking at the development of the standards as they go not only across the year, but across the unit and what's going to happen within each day of the week. And if you note just there, it says the next few days will focus on developing proficiency with dividing multi-digit numbers by single-digit numbers. So the mapping has been done. The pathway has been put there for teachers to follow. They have a much broader lens as well. It's not just a single day-to-day piece. So they see the map. And then it's broken down to what's going to be happening specifically on each day. So again, coming back to the point that the text is not what's driving our instruction, it's the curriculum.
Thank you.
Mr. Liu, I'd like to address your concern with our scores.
Yeah.
I think our chart suggests that we've actually demonstrated improvement in the area of mathematics, according to CMT scores. And we find ourselves right there in the middle of the pack with other DERG A and B towns. What we, through our analysis, based on not only CMT but other benchmark assessments that we administer, is we feel like we're at a point where we may be plateauing in that. Hence, a new curriculum before you. That we believe it's this curriculum that embeds some standards that once existed at the middle school level. We brought down some standards in algebra, proportional reasoning, ratios, and we increased the expectations in grades 3, 4, and 5 for the purpose of improving our scores, if you will. More importantly, for improving our students' understanding about mathematics. That we wanted to strike a balance in this curriculum. It wasn't just about math facts. And basic math facts, the mastery of, exists in the curriculum that is before you. I want to go ahead and say that on record. We expect mastery of basic facts in grades 3, 4, and 5. We want students to automatically know their basic facts. So that bigger, a higher level thinking is easier for them because they are able to snap out their facts. But that wasn't the side of the spectrum we wanted to land on only. We wanted to strike a balance so that we incorporated conceptual understanding as well. And so the curriculum that's before you exceeds the standards of Common Core. We chose to, as a district, to bring some middle school standards down to accelerate and bring up the standard for our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders so that our scores, which we feel are pretty good, we can now take to another level of excellence, and we feel that the curriculum before you does that.
And what about our CAPT scores?
Dr. Rosado?
What do you mean, what about our CAP scores?
Well, in our DERG, we're 69, which is opposed to Wilton, 83, Westport, 90, Weston, 86, Ridgefield, 88, Canaan, 86.
Right, well, they're not in our DERG, that's just our geographic
All
area.
right, our geographic
But we
area,
also
I'm sorry.
have, those, our CAP scores would be based on kids who took the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade curriculum 7, 6, 5 years ago.
Right.
Right. And I think that we certainly are looking to improve our test scores in all grades. I mean, we're not satisfied with any test scores that we have. And this does lay the foundation for that. If we're not satisfied with our CAP scores, then that's a reason to change the curriculum and the expectations from what our current practice is.
And that is work that's actually happening at this moment. If in terms of the curriculum renewal calendar, that's what's coming up next year and the year after.
So the whole picture will be out there, but I think there was a lot of focus in the last meeting on CAPT, I think partly because the strategic school profiles were sitting right in front of everybody. But I think that, yes, grades 3, 4, 5 lays a foundation, and it's important, and you know, but that's a reason why we need to change what we're presently doing, which is why the curriculum is under review. So that's the nature of the beast.
Thank you, Dr. Title. There was some concern at the last meeting, and I've heard this throughout the district as well, that math is being taught differently in every school. So that's the past. What's the future going to be different?
We actually, when we were beginning this process several years ago, we actually surveyed the district and found that to be true. And so part of the initiative was to build consistency across the district. And what we are also currently working on, and the teachers have been doing a tremendous amount of heavy lifting over the past couple of years, is looking at the that the taught curriculum is the written curriculum or vice versa, that the written curriculum is the actual taught curriculum. And so that, and even just standardizing how much math time is being taught, or how much time is being taught for math every single day, to what is in the lessons, to mapping out the sequence of lessons. So as we had shared in the past, that teachers make a lot of choices about the resources they're using. We're providing significantly more guidance in that from a district perspective right now. So we are working towards that consistency for all 11 elementary schools.
I think evidence of that, Mr. Liu, are the lessons in your hands.
No, I saw that. That's
Grade 4, Unit 7, Lesson 10. We expect grade 4 teachers to be in the vicinity, you know, maybe a week apart, but within the vicinity on this lesson.
And they will be using the same pages from the same resources in every school so that there is some uniformity. I'm not talking about the style in which a teacher might teach.
Right.
I'm talking about the delivery of resources.
The resources that are cited in these lessons
Yeah.
are in every teacher's classroom.
Yeah.
We are not asking teachers to teach from resources they don't have.
But then, is that something we are going to follow up on to make sure that teachers are doing that? Because I think what the feeling is from before is that teachers kind of just went and did what they thought was going to help best. And I think their intentions were good, but what I'm saying is as a cohesive curriculum within the district.
I think they may have been filling in the gap where we didn't provide direction or guidance as a district. So as a district, I think we have to own that. And what we're providing teachers now is not just a guide and resources, but also professional development and opportunities to learn from one another and opportunities to collaborate and sit around the same table and say, all right, so the next 10 units are coming up. What are we going to do? Who has what? What ideas do you have? We've built that into preparing for this rollout. Will it be perfect next year? No. This is going to be work in progress. This is going to be about working with each teacher, just like each child, and taking them from where they are in their understanding of mathematics to a higher level. You know, it's oftentimes that you hear, mostly from teachers, oh, I'm not good at math, you know, that's not my strength, and we hear that all over, not just in
Not mine either.
Fairfield.
Right.
So it's our responsibility to invest in the capacity of each teacher, because this is a big shift for teachers. This is not about pulling out a Scott Forsman's book, turn to page 54, and now teach this lesson. This requires a much deeper understanding of mathematics, and the most exciting part about our pilot this year has been the conversation that has occurred among professionals about math instruction and their own growth in that. And what has happened is that has dominoed down to the student. And we're hearing anecdote after anecdote of kids completely engaged in mathematics, really excited, and running home and saying, this is what I learned in math, from many parents for the first time in a long time.
I also just have to acknowledge the efforts of the teachers in this town who have been doing a tremendous amount of work at the elementary level to make this come to fruition. Not only the teachers in the classroom providing feedback, but those who are intricately involved in writing and the willingness to revise when you put something out there and hearing the feedback to improve these documents. There has been also professional development where teachers are observing each other, and this is also part of the rounds. Everything is coming together around this. So.
I'm really glad to hear that. I just have like 50 more questions.
I know
Just
you didn't
kidding.
have a- No, it's okay. I know you didn't have a chance to get some stuff
Thank
out
you.
last time.
I know in the last meeting, you had said that you were going to assess delivery and achievement by the CMTs and the blue ribbon, but there's got to be more, given that what you're just talking about. So again, can you explain a little bit about that?
What exactly do you want to know,
Well, I think
please? I'm sorry.
I do feel like you sort of answered it, but I don't know why it was not answered last time, in that there was a question asked, well, how do you assess if the curriculum is working, if the teachers are learning, if the kids are learning? And I believe the answer was, well, no, we don't have something like that. What we have are the CMT results and the blue ribbon results, which I feel is too late. Yes, of course, you're going to use those as part of our analysis, but on a day-to-day basis, a week-to-week basis, what kind of implementation do you have in place that assures that we're not going to fall down, or if someone starts to fall, that we can catch them?
I just remember a part of a conversation, we talked about the fluency tests that you gave and stuff like that. I don't know.
Well, I mean, we have a pretty robust assessment calendar. Ask any elementary teacher. They would agree. Thank you for the nods. Maybe too robust. That's something we could revisit, though. So, Mr. Liu, I think we have actually a pretty darn good handle on how kids are doing throughout the year based on our robust assessment calendar. But day to day is your question. And I think that's the skill of teaching, on assessing student learning while students are in a collaborative mode, grappling over a problem. And what we're doing is teaching teachers what to listen for in a child's processing of mathematics. And we're developing rubrics and checklists. And that is, I'm not sure I would call it assessment. I think I would call that great teaching. That as you're teaching, you are regularly taking input in from students and then changing your teaching, your plan for the next day. And we build into our instructional units opportunities for little mini assessments, like on the go. Something that's a parent may never see because it just informs instruction. We have end-of-unit assessments. We have teacher-made tests, the kind that you grade and you get home and you put on the fridge. And then those formal assessments that we have. Fluency is directly related to how well does a child know his or her basic facts. We keep an eye on that 3 times a year, starting in first grade, right? And then we have Blue Ribbon. That's 3 times a year as well. That's a formal assessment. But Blue Ribbon also has a feature that any teacher can go in and develop an assessment based on a strand of mathematics. And it also allows teachers to share it across a school and a district. And what we're finding is teachers are developing their own assessments in Blue Ribbon based on the January administration of Blue Ribbon, so that in a month or next week, I can give an assessment based on that area of weakness in my class. So the success of a curriculum is all about student learning. And I feel like we have formal and informal tabs built in to keeping an eye on that. And then the fidelity of implementation is placed on the shoulders of our administrators.
That was more of my question. I mean, I understand the teachers do that daily with their kids. I guess it was more about administration following up with the teachers, making sure that the results are being implemented correctly and that the results are doing well, which I know you sort of answered it, so let me just sort of segue into the next question, which is why didn't we pilot this program first?
We did.
We did. Because I thought...
We've been piloting units of study for the last 2, 3, some schools 3, all schools 2.
Because I could have swore that that was a question asked last time, and it was said, no, we didn't pilot this program. So excuse me if I'm wrong, but we did pilot this program.
We've been piloting this program. Teachers, yes.
Okay. And then just the very last question, which is, obviously this is a hot topic issue. We've got parents who are concerned about this, and you had said that, Mr. Wake, no, I'm sorry, actually, Mr. Rosado, that, one of the, besides the teachers and the elementary schools that have been involved, that you had a parent focus group that met on March 1st. And how long was that meeting?
I think it ran about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And I guess the question that I've been asked and that people are upset about is that you talk about that you've been working on this curriculum for years, and I believe that there are people, and there's always going to be differences of opinions, but I think we live in a very unique town with a lot of outspoken people, and I think that's also good. That's what makes us a rich and diverse environment. But when you give, I don't know, the way you sort of touting it was as if they had put input into implementation or into the development of the curriculum, and that's not the case.
No, as you know, we have very passionate folks around the concepts of math and how that should be instructed in our schools, and people are not shy about sharing those opinions with us. So for several years, there have been multiple parent meetings, not necessarily formal focus groups as we did conduct in March, but certainly parent input was provided to us, and we asked also along the way for some feedback on some things. However, having said that, I do know that that's a concern regarding the curriculum development process. So we have a council, a curriculum council made up of the program leaders within the district as well as some central office folks. We are meeting right after the vacation coming up, and one of the things on the agenda is to revisit parental feedback, involvement, and in the entire process of curriculum development. I know that that's a concern about our current practice. We typically have had one focus group when we're at the point of making a recommendation of a curriculum to the Board of Education. So that's what we have done for several years. That's been the process. And we did that here as well. And I think there were close to 15, 20 parents in attendance. And we had some questions that were responded to. And we took that feedback very seriously. But that's been the process we have used. But having said that, I will say we are going to revisit that process to ensure that we have, greater input along the way. But in this particular case, there has been a great deal of information that has come our way from interested parents who are very passionate about this. They have worked with Mr. Wakeman, myself, and with Anna as well along the way. So, we have heard the concerns, but the formal process we are looking at right after the break.
Yeah, I think for the best interest of everyone, because I think we can learn from so many different points of views, and also from relationships with our parents, that an hour after the thing has been developed to go through those 3 thick books and be able to even begin to assess it correctly. That's not only is it not going to help the parents, but it's not going to help you, because how can anyone look at this in an hour and be able to give you constructive feedback? It seems to me that part of that process should be a month earlier, before you've put the last period down, to say, are there things here, so that they actually are a part of the process.
Yeah. That's a point well taken. I would say that probably the number one piece of feedback that came out of the focus group had very much to do with resources for parents, such as online guides, online information, websites that they can go to assist their child. And that was, a beautiful thing for us to hear, because that is something we want to build into this particular process and into future curriculum processes as well. But there was a pretty open dialogue amongst all the parents, and there were a few concerns in terms of the content of the curriculum that came forward, and folks did have it ahead of time as well. But that was probably the most important thing that we heard, was they wanted support at home so that they could help their child with the curriculum.
Well, it's very true. I mean, as a parent myself, I start sitting down with my son, trying to help him with his math homework, and I'll show him how the way I learned it, and he'll go, that's not the way we do it in school.
Right.
And I go, well,
Right.
I don't know how to do it that way. So I really think that we do need to have, not just on the computer, but classes
Some resources.
where the parents can get caught up with what, because, I usually then I go, you have to wait till your mom comes home, because she's the math person.
We
All
have
right.
similar concerns at our house. Thank you, Mr. Liu.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Convertito.
Yeah, first I'd like to thank those people who took the time out of their day to meet with me, in their own time or, professionally, in the last couple of weeks to discuss this. And those of you who did, you know who you are. My original concern when this was presented was, how did we assess the old curriculum? What were the pitfalls of it? And how does this new curriculum address that? I can tell you, I was meeting with 2 members of the staff, sitting in a office, and behind them was this whiteboard with this problem on it. And I think the problem was 52 times 3. I can't remember exactly what it was. And I kept looking over the shoulder of the professional I was talking to, and just looking at it going, it's the right answer, but I have no idea how they got there. And what the child had, evidently there was a child in the classroom, or in that room, and had taken and multiplied the 3 times 50 first, and had put 150 down, and 3 times the 6, and the 6 was at the bottom. And of course I had been taught by nuns many years ago that you do the ones place first and then the tens place. And so it was reversed, top to bottom. Of course, they got the right answer. And at that point in time, this entire curriculum clicked to me. And I looked at the professional in front of me and said, what this curriculum does is it's differentiated. You're taking a child who may or may not be able to do it the quote-unquote traditional way. And I equate that to our reading and language arts programs in the elementary school, in which I don't care if you like fiction, historical novels, or this or that. By the time you're done with that lesson in 3rd or 4th grade, we expect you to be able to tell us who the main characters were, what the theme was, and what the whole body of work was about. And this curriculum takes that approach in this. Am I happy with Scott Forsman? No, but I'm comfortable with the fact that we have backburnered Scott Forsman. I have looked at the body of work that's there, and I am comfortable with that. And I have been taking my son on accepted college student visits in the last couple of weeks, and had a lot of time on trains to sit there with my laptop. And I came across an article, I think it was in the Clearinghouse, National Clearinghouse, and it was on this whole topic of what do? Do you go with this math curriculum, do you go with that math curriculum, and how this curriculum has become, the flavor of the month, and everybody's doing great. And the analysis of the doctor who was doing it was, it's not so much that you pulled a new textbook and curriculum. What you've done is, in order to implement that, you've gone through professional development, and you've now taken your teachers and you've taken them from ground 2 to ground 7. And his entire analysis of that was, it's not this textbook or it's that textbook. What everybody is doing now, because they're going to this core curriculum, is they're going through this tremendous professional development program. And I also see that integrated into this curriculum. So I'm comfortable with it. And again, thank you for those who took the time to meet with me and to talk about it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Mr. Fattabine, and then Mrs. Brand.
All right. I sort of want to preface this with a broad statement, being that I believe math to be an inherently difficult subject to teach, and especially to teach and to obtain achievement that's broad and uniform among a given class. But in any event, I looked at this information you handed out on the CMT scores from 2006 to 2011, and what I find particularly troubling in that list is for grade 5 in Fairfield. Our math scores in 2011, out of 19 towns given in that list, we're only higher than 3 of them. I assume, I think I got that correctly, but you can check it. But which is troubling in a sense. Out of 19 towns in this list, we're only higher than 3. I would think Fairfield can do better than that. So when I reviewed this curriculum, I took a look at the Common Core state standards, and the information was provided, and went through the different grade levels and what the subject matter was for those grade levels, and I tried to compare that with the proposed curriculum. And quite honestly, I think they're in substantial conformance, I think that the proposed curriculum does substantially conform to at least the information I was given on the Common Core state standards by grade level, which is good in a way. But I think the problem that addresses the community and the problem that addresses the public is whether or not that is what the public wants and what is good enough for Fairfield. And since we are a community school system and a community district, a lot of our curriculum should be driven by what the community wants. So while the Common Core of state standards may be good for the 50 states and even good for Connecticut, it may not be good enough for Fairfield. So I think that one has to think as a policy whether one wants to introduce in their curriculum something above and beyond the Common Core state standards. And I think that's a real discussion that should be had, and one that may take some time. But in any event, it was mentioned tonight that the proposed curriculum does extend beyond the Common Core state standards in some areas. Quite honest with you, I didn't find those areas, and I'd be interested to see if one can point out where they believe those subject matters do extend beyond the state standards of Common Core. Now, admittedly, the ones I was given was fairly broad, generalized standards, but they had this, I think I understood what the math was, the adding, division, dividing by numbers, fractions, geometry, different, so they're all fairly basic concepts, and the details are where you get more specific, but the broad concepts, I think, I didn't say anything that was outwardly or jumped out as exceeding the Common Core state standards, so that would be interesting to know where that is believed to be. But those are my comments on this curriculum, and I would, if the board is so inclined, I would perhaps suggest that we, if we believe as a board that the community and the public want something more than what is delivered by the Common Core state standards, then maybe we defer this and have a discussion on what additional the community may want and what additional things we may want to suggest or direct be added to this curriculum document.
Can we address that?
Sure.
We actually have some examples of how we've gone beyond, above and beyond.
There, for example, in grade 6, they have, there's proportional reasoning, ratio and rates is really what the primary focus is for that grade level. We actually started addressing that in grade 3 from some introductory work, just by looking at, and we develop it through grades 4 and grade 5. It's not as formal nor as in-depth as what the 6th grade students do or what's outlined in the Common Core state standards. However, we're not in the business of holding children back, and so there are opportunities for children to move forward in their thinking, should they be ready for that. And, as you may note in the sample documents, lesson documents, we also provide suggestions for differentiating for scaffolding students as well. So we do provide opportunities for students to stretch their thinking at each of the grade levels.
We also had opportunity to meet with some board members individually. And if some of you recall, we gave you an example of a document that would be before students. And although it met the, was it grade 4, Walter? Grade 4 angles and measurement unit standard, we proposed in that unit, we provided documents for teachers to use with students that would actually take them into 7th and 8th grade work on angles and measurement. So in something like this, Mr. Fatabeen, behind it will be support documents for teachers. So there are documents that meet the standard on angles and measurement, but then there's also student work that could be provided for students that would take them into higher grades, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade understanding of angles and measurement. So we introduced some concepts in middle school in an introductory manner in grades 3, 4, and 5, such as the example Mr. Wakeman gave, but then also through exact student work. We provide opportunities for acceleration, which our current curriculum does not have. So we feel like we have addressed going beyond minimum standard.
Can I build on that for just a moment as well? Because there's another piece to the puzzle that goes along with the Common Core state standards, and that is the assessment piece, which is also changing in a major fundamental way. In spring of 2015, the CMT and CAPT will no longer be given as we currently know them, and the new assessments that are coming in are tied to those standards, but the tests will be very different because there will not be a ceiling on the test, meaning that the students will continue on throughout the progression of the tests until they miss so many in a row, and then they will be stopped. So in other words, they won't just finish a test and then close the book. They will continue on to higher levels. And so through the curriculum, we're going to be needing to make sure that we're stretching the kids, because those kids who are able to go beyond the current level will be able to do that in those assessments. And that's an important component to this that's driving that level. And also at the secondary level, we are currently working on the middle and high school component of this, which we're going to be bringing forward some of those documents next school year for you. We're finding, as we're aligning the middle school curriculum, that we're going to bringing down into the middle level some of what is currently and traditionally taught at the high school level is now coming down. So as you move up through the Common Core state standards into the secondary level, you will see that it becomes very high level, very rigorous, because what was traditionally high school is now coming down. So those are two pieces to that we're looking at.
Go ahead.
If I could follow up on that. In part of my investigation, I took a look at the Massachusetts state curriculum that recently adopted the Common Core standards last fall. And I took note that in both grades 4 and 5, not in 3, in grade 3, they had a mirror image of the Common Core standards were their standards. But in grade 4, they added a standard. I'm not a math major, so I won't pretend to repeat it. And in grade 5, they added a standard. Your answer when we met tonight is that you do have higher standards, but you've chosen not to document them as a standard on your curriculum. You've, I guess, considered it a tactic. Is there a reason why you wouldn't say, here are the Common Core standards, and as Mr. Fattabine is suggesting, hold our students to a higher standard than the ones that are there and put in 2 or 3 higher level standards? Why not hold ourselves accountable for that?
Right, I understand. The grade 4, if I remember correctly, in Massachusetts, the standard that they had added was to know their basic facts 12 times 12 through the 12 tables. We are currently working on that in Fairfield. It is not in the standards, but if you look, I believe,
Page 17.
it may be 17, I'll find it for you in a moment, in my notes here. In the curriculum document, it is embedded in the standard itself as an expectation, even though it is not as explicit as saying do 12 times 12. It is talking about doing multi-digit computation. And so that is an inherent in that. I also would like to just share with you a couple of examples. This is out of the California curriculum as well, which is also one that adopted the Common Core state standards. And in the grade 3, for example, they've done some further clarification of the grade level expectations on the standards. So it's not really that they've changed them, they just put in clarifying language. For example, they use an example of the commutative property where you have 5 groups of 7, and they also inserted 7 groups of 5. Another example of that, they included understand 4 digits by 4 digits. I'm sorry, let me read this again. They're looking at 3,706, and they would like students to represent it as 3,000 plus 700 plus 6. The expanded notation, we currently do that. That's part of our old curriculum. It's also embedded in the work that we're currently doing.
I understand that, but if California added a standard to clarify,
Right.
and if Massachusetts added a couple of standards to hold us to higher expectations, then why wouldn't we hold ourselves to higher expectations, type it in there and say, we expect every teacher to be able to achieve this level?
I think we're saying it is in there. It just doesn't sound like Massachusetts. Page 17 of grade 3 states multiply and divide within 100, 30A7, fluently multiply and divide within 100 using strategies such as the relationship between multiplication and division. That's the Massachusetts standard. It just doesn't read exactly as it is.
So it's in there, you're just saying it a different way.
Yeah.
Well,
It's the clarifying language. There is some translation
Document, Perry.
Oh.
It's the curriculum document.
that some of the states are doing, and that's what this further clarification language is about. But it's the same, we're all speaking the same language.
I think really what we're driving out is the rigor. There's been a call
Right.
to, are we offering a rigorous program?
And that's where we have been spending a great deal amount of energy and time in the actual unit documents themselves and increasing the rigor. And what does that rigor look like? How are we challenging all children?
And you feel, based on this, that you are giving our students not only the core standard, but you're giving them the rigor they need to go above and beyond.
Right.
We don't feel, I think we know from feedback we're getting.
I have other questions, but I
Okay, Mrs. Brand.
No, that's okay. Actually, I have some of the same thoughts as both Mr. Fattabine and Mr. Dwyer. I wanted to ask, again, what schools did the pilot studies?
They initially started with Holland Hill, Jennings, Dwight, and Burr.
Okay, were they all starting at the same time and doing
Those 4
exactly the
schools
same-
started at the same time, yes.
Okay, and how long ago was that?
About 3 years ago.
Okay, do we have a report on an analysis of what those pilot study yielded?
It's been development over time. It's been based on the teacher feedback and teacher input, and we've had to go back with revamping the units. Now, originally, these were being, we're addressing the issue of consistency of instruction across the district, And so we were using our current curriculum for developing these. And then when the Common Core standards came out, we needed to start focusing on what does that look like. Fortunately, the work that we have been doing was specified with more clarity in the mathematical practices, which are part of the standards in this new curriculum document, but it dovetailed beautifully into the work that we had already been doing.
I guess what I'm asking you, so Common Core came in the midway through?
It came in July of 2010.
All right, so, okay, then it's about midway through where you were halfway done? So you'd already started some work with the pilot studies?
Yes.
Okay, my next question then, relative to that, since you were modifying on the way, but we have no analysis as to what that actually did with student achievement by site and as a whole, whether or not we were garnering what we hoped it would do. That's what I'm looking for, quite frankly, because that to me would be the point of the pilot study, to see, did it work, did it achieve what we hoped? The second thing I wanted to know is, relative to that, we're spending, I know, a lot of time and conversation on this, but as a board member, if I'm looking at grades 3, 4, and 5, just before they go into middle school, I want to be very confident that the skill set that they have, the conceptual understandings that they have are very solid. Because if we lose 3 years and we don't hit the mark, the ramifications are going to play up even into high school. And that concerns me. So if I seem like I'm being very critical, it is truly with the best interests of our students as I'm moving forward. My other question is, did you give professional development for the pilot study, and do you have it planned for this coming year?
Yes and yes.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have incorporated with that professional development also the middle school?
Yes, the middle school has a professional development plan. As I said, they're currently working on their curriculum alignment, so they're not at this point yet, but summer work is already being planned.
Yeah, because my concern is sixth grade in particular, because we're changing and shifting gears, and, you know, they're going to have it coming in. Are we going to have an analysis as to what sixth grade sees? Because it's the sixth grade that get all the feeder schools that can pretty much tell you, not only by school, but sometimes even by class, where there were holes, where kids had gaps, whether this was working. I guess I want to see that we're really hitting the mark and keep assessing it.
Well, I think after we have a full year of implementation of a board of approved curriculum with a revised instructional model, we may be able to have sixth grade teachers provide us with some feedback in 2 years. But, you know, September, we hope to go full course press on 11 schools, all third, fourth, and fifth grade, all new units of study based on a Board of Ed curriculum.
Do we have any kind of assessment planned at the end of next year? Because I think what we've had is a curriculum, good, bad, or otherwise, that most of the teachers in the sixth grade knew what they were getting when they came through the door, and they knew what kind of adjustments they had to make. The following year, that's going to be not the case, and what adjustments will be necessary, you know, they're going to be trying to regroup very quickly, quite frankly, over the summer. So I'm wondering if they have an assessment of some sort at the end of the year that will help them so that when the kids are coming in, they know where they're landing.
We have all the assessments that are built into our assessment calendar, including those blue ribbon results that can easily be transferred to sixth grade teachers, and those we do 3 times a year. So we don't have to wait till the end of the year to...
when is the last blue ribbon test given?
May.
Okay.
Those are also, those blue ribbon tests also are administered through the middle school.
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to, it was my understanding that the parents that went to the focus group did not get the materials until they were there. To be honest, if we really want to garner something out of that, and I do think it's a valuable piece, we have actually a lot of very knowledgeable people in careers that are math careers that are willing to spend the time and donate, and I actually think it would have been infinitely of more value had they had it and also had some more time also to discuss it.
Yeah, I think that was unfortunate that some received them at that time, but some did receive them ahead of time, and the reason for that was we started probably 2 months ahead of time recruiting parents for the parent focus group, and I went through the PTA council for that to happen, and we did not get the volunteers that we thought we were going to get. As the time got closer, we actually had to go out sort of at the 11th hour to recruit some parents, and then, of course, we did have several, but we needed to provide the documents sort of at the 11th hour.
I wanted to also ask, when was this written, and how long did it take to write this? The curriculum?
The curriculum actually has been in development over the past couple of years, and it takes place primarily during the summer, because that's honestly when the teachers have the time to work on it. It's very difficult during the school year for them to work in the classroom as well as do the writing. So for the past 2 summers, we've been looking at the Common Core state standards, looking at how to develop them across the units, and then looking at our unit that the implementation guides that the teachers have, and the work that we are doing then. That also occurs during the summer.
Okay, and I'm sorry?
No, that's okay, go ahead.
My last question is about the gifted part or the challenging part, and I think to Mr. Dwyer's point, I don't think he was speaking, and correct me, Mr. Dwyer, if I'm wrong, that specifically we were talking about whether they were multiplication tables or it was embedded. If we understand what the next challenging phase is for that grade level, if we actually have it in writing, we have a mutual understanding throughout the district what that looks like and what we're shooting for. And I think to that point, I think that's what I'm looking for, is to understand what that's going to mean. I think that will help in terms of the transition with the middle schools as well. I also think in terms of what teachers' expectations are and parents, they actually know what they're looking for. We know what the next grade up is, but there are even pieces within that. And I think that part I'd like to see in the curriculum so that it's much more clear what we're looking for gifted, and also what we're looking for if we have an issue. There are kids that might not do as well in something like this. To Mr. Convertito's point, it looks like it looks at learning in a myriad of ways. And though I find that helpful, I'm not sure I see built into this cycle the review time. I mean, I'm looking at the samples here, and you're moving right along, and you have some flexibility, but if we're losing some kid on one section and they don't get it, math is the kind of place that if you lose it and you don't get it, and it keeps moving, you're lost. And I want to make sure that that's also built into this, because that's a concern. I don't want to lose them I just don't want to lose a kid.
Ms. Brand, I do believe that we've built that in, but it doesn't appropriately sit in at the high-level curriculum document you're looking at. If you look at the third lesson, Unit 7, Lesson 14, that's, I think, a really nice example of how we provide teachers with ideas on how to differentiate. So what we've built into the day-to-day lessons is this section called Differentiation Suggestions. And this is the kind of document that is organic, if you will. It's going to change, it's going to be modified, teachers' ideas are going to be put in here. But if you take a look at this lesson, there are ideas on how to help the child who's below benchmark, providing them with concrete manipulatives. But then there's an extension idea in here as well. And we see this block of the lesson plan actually developing with time and as our expertise, as teachers' expertise develops. So I do believe that our what we are providing teachers, the guidance, the big notebook, if you will, for lack of better terms, actually provides teachers with ideas on how to address students who are not at grade level and students who are above grade level. So what you're asking us of, I think we've already provided at the teacher level, where it matters at day-to-day on how to make those quick decisions on, oh, this group of students are not getting it. This group is already done. Let me throw a challenge at them. So I believe we're providing that in teachers' hands.
I forgot, this is one more.
Sure.
I asked a professional development question. How much time are you given for the professional development for this shift? Is it a day, half a day?
We've actually restructured our calendar this year. The elementary leadership team came together and looked at all of the program initiatives. So there's more than just math happening at the elementary school. So we have to share time with language arts and a new progress report and technology, et cetera. So we actually have the professional development days that are given to us, 2 for the district, 2 by building And buildings choose to prioritize the use of their days, but many, most all, have used their days to support the use of data, mathematics, and literacy. The 2 days we get have been split. K2 is literacy, 3-5 has been mathematics. We're about to shift that because we're ready to start working with K2 teachers in math. But the Tuesday calendar has been instrumental to us this year. And in working with the elementary leadership team, they have given, quote unquote, the district, our elementary central office team, one Tuesday a month to work with teachers in grades 3-5 in mathematics, K2 on literacy. And then the other days are building-based days or department day. And they, too, are using those days for professional development, more so now than staff meetings. So we've actually tried to capitalize, particularly at the elementary level as a team. We came together for consistency to utilize every time we have with teachers in a professional development manner as opposed to just holding a meeting. So I can confidently say that every month we're talking with teachers about math instruction.
I'd like to also just let you know that it's not one-shot professional development. The math science teachers are instrumental in collaborating and working alongside with teachers, addressing questions on how to support and scaffold students who may be not accessing the concepts that are being taught, and also scaffolding students who may have some pretty solid understandings of what the lesson is about for that day and how to stretch their thinking as well. It is collaborative. They are working together. I know that many of the teachers have been working with them during their grade level times. It has been very much a collaborative effort. I can't underscore enough the amount of cohesion among the teachers and work that they have done in working on this and understanding the mathematics and the instructional model that has been being developed over the past couple of years.
All right, I just want to remind everybody it's 8:35.
The only thing I would say, there's no question this took a tremendous amount of work, and that there has been intensive work done with the pilot studies. As a board member, I would have felt a lot better about this had I been able to review the pilot study and showing what we were going to gain first before we were actually looking at this. I would have felt a little more comfortable.
Thank you. Mr. Dwyer.
Just 3 questions or comments leading to a question. Following up on Mr. Fadabine's comment, if you look at the 19 schools and you look at all 3 grades and you look at the comparison between 06 and 11, I'll say in the main, I don't think we are in the middle of the pack. I think we're in the bottom quartile of the pack. Have I misread these numbers in terms of Mr. Fadabine's conclusion that there's really only 4 or 5 of the schools that have lower scores than us in the main?
Is that a question?
Yeah.
Well, it appears that there's a 7.4 percentage point difference between the highest district and our district. So in the
Now, I'm
spread,
talking on a median basis, how many schools scored lower than us and how many schools scored higher than us?
I haven't done that analysis.
And
Mr.
we're in the
Dwyer.
bottom quartile. And I think Mr. Fadimine raises a good question. Is the result of this curriculum going to move us to the top quartile within our DRG group? And that's actually my question.
That would be our goal, to improve our scores and strive for excellence.
On pain of,
This is not our DRG.
It's important to know that several...
This is not our DRG,
what,
okay?
Several schools are...
But the point is that you think that this new curriculum will move us.
Well, we would like continuous improvement. That would be our message.
and
We'd like to improve our student achievement scores.
and the point I'm trying to make is that whatever we choose to measure ourselves against, benchmark ourselves against, whether it's the DRG or a selected group of schools, I would think Fairfield would want to aspire and expect ourselves, as a Board of Education, as well as our students, to be in the top of whatever group we choose to measure ourselves against. And I would hope that this curriculum, and I think this curriculum will get us there, but I think that's the goal, the overall goal. Second question I had, a comment I had, if you will. So I bumped into Northern Middlesex Regional School in Massachusetts that back in 2000 adopted Singapore math. And the person who pushed that went to some conference and presented a paper. And when asked, the answer, I think, supports Mr. Convertito's comment. And let me tell you what it is regarding, did Singapore Math help you get the scores that you got, which were very good? It is as much the professional development in mathematics and the administrative support as it is the textbook and the program. And then she further said that to provide more academic opportunity and rigor, this happened to be talking about middle school students, they eliminated all activity block periods. They established a goal that all middle school math teachers would have majors in their field, provided more time for mathematics, and reviewed and revised all curricula in math. I really do think that it's about professional development. And in looking at the budget, there is a line item that says you added about $24,000 for math professional development. But during the budget discussion, I thought that was aimed at the middle school math initiative. And I guess I'm not exactly convinced that there's enough money and/or professional time dedicated to professional development as a major change in curriculum would require. And hopefully you'll be able to squeeze it out some fashion, even more than what you described.
All the more reason to get our budget approved as proposed.
And then the third comment I'd make and ask, again, looking at these scores by elementary schools, it seems as though the gap between the highest scoring school and the lowest was almost 20 points back in '06, and it's down to only 12 points today. But there is still a gap between the highest performing and lowest performing school, taking McKinley out, if you will, because of their special needs. Does this curriculum in any way address closing that gap in terms of the allocation of resources and any special training to teachers that might help them make sure that 2 or 3 years from now, the gap is not 12 points, but now down to 6 points?
Yeah, Mr. Dwyer, we believe that, just tapping into previous answers, that with a more consistent instructional model, with greater fidelity to the instructional model, with greater monitoring and support through lessons like this to ensure consistency, that we're going to raise all scores across the 11. And what's been really encouraging is that our practice has not just, we've moved out of our own classrooms with math. We've now opened our doors to our neighboring teachers. We're collaborating on mathematics. That's happened a long time in the area of literacy. I think because we have a common model, common PD, common expectations, and now hopefully a common curriculum, new curriculum, that we are starting to share across schools as well. And the gift of having a full-time math science teacher at every building has helped that. So thank you to the board. We're seeing the dividends of that today. That math science teachers are sharing their practice, their successes, their challenges, and then going back to their own schools and doing the same. And through even feeder schools, we're starting to find some teachers and math science teachers taking their own initiative of bringing feeder schools together. So the sharing of math practice, along with PD, common curriculum, monitoring, lessons like this, I think will result in a closing of the achievement gap as compared to each one of the 11 schools.
Thank you.
Mrs. Gerber. And can I just get a show of hands if anybody hasn't spoke, if they plan on speaking, only because it's 8:40 and I just want to make sure we run the table. Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks.
I just have one question. A lot of people have mentioned the Singapore curriculum. Why didn't we do
Thank you for
Singapore?
asking that.
Thank you. Like the elephant in the room.
I would have been so disappointed if we couldn't answer that tonight.
In part because, even, believe it or not, Singapore is going through some revisions with the Common Core State Standard. There are, and that's in speaking with them directly, but we've also, in looking at some of the research, some of the areas that they fall down, is some of the problem-solving piece, I'm sorry, with the
Real life cycle.
making sense of problems. And if you look at that, it's one of the first strands in our mathematical practices in our curriculum document. This is the U.S. version that we're talking about, and they are very strong. They do show a lot of strength in the with the basic facts and helping kids to develop some number sense. So there are a lot of positives about this program. And what we've also seen is that there's a lot of positive anecdotal evidence, but there is no research studies right now that have demonstrated, the U.S. anyway, that it has had a significant impact on schools. Again, a lot of districts are in transition, just as we are. We're moving into the K-2. We will be looking at evaluating programs, and this is all programs, including the Singapore program, as we're moving forward. We're just not at that point right now. We're focusing on looking at the standards and the curriculum document that we're moving forward with, and helping teachers to make that shift with both the content and the understanding the mathematical practices and helping them to come alive in the classrooms.
If I could add to that, Ms. Gerber. We've done our homework on Singapore, and I'm not sure that our work in research is done with that. We'd like to keep Singapore on the table along with other texts that will be revised and updated in the next couple of years. But in our current research on it, we looked for scientifically based research. And there are two organizations out there that we lean on occasionally, one being the Institute for Educational Science and then the Charles Dana Center, which provide research around math and science practice, and the first one cited actually in other areas, literacy. They're finding, so we've gone to third party, not just anecdotal. They're finding that there's inconclusive evidence around Singapore in the United States, and that so there is no scientific data out there to say yes, because it's too early, is what they're stating. We'd like to take the time to let Singapore flesh itself out in some of the neighboring towns. In our homework on this chart, we only found one town that was implementing Singapore, and that's currently. They've actually just put it in this year. There's another town that's piloting some grades, some only in some classes. But we also found two towns, interestingly enough, very much like Fairfield on this chart, that will be moving away from their current resource, and Singapore was on the table for them as well. And they've chosen not to go with Singapore as well. They've chosen to write their own units of study. So I'm not sure that there's enough evidence out there that Singapore is the answer. But if there's evidence that is provided for us in the next couple of years that we can put up against other textbooks as we entertain them all, we'll be happy to consider Singapore as well. We just didn't see that Singapore had enough evidence that it was the answer for us. And it didn't exactly align with our instructional model, that we felt there wasn't enough real-life application, wasn't enough conceptual understanding, development around real-life problems. So it wasn't an exact match for us. And we felt like what we were proposing in our curriculum, as aligned to the Common Core as Singapore is, was sufficient and at a high level for our students here. So it's not completely off the table, but we'd like a little bit more research on Singapore on a national level.
Mrs. Kennelly.
I just can't resist one mention of, with all of this talk of the tremendous collaboration among our teachers and the widely acknowledged need for professional development and for professional expertise in these fields, keep those topics in mind as this Senate Bill 24 keeps getting tossed around. So just that's my toss away. Not in the least. Not at all. Some questions I think I can go through very quickly. We keep mentioning the blue ribbon assessment, and I have to admit, I don't know, what is that assessing? I mean, we're talking about changing standards, and we have these, we know we're throwing out CMTs. What exactly, what aspect of the math curriculum is that going to be assessing in terms of how much of it is valuable?
Right. The blue ribbon actually does mirror the current Connecticut Mastery Test as far as the types of questions that are asked. And one of the areas, actually a few of the areas that we consistently fall down in the district is estimating solutions to problems. That often has some underpinnings to students' understanding of number sense. Right. We also tend to struggle in the area of integrated problem solving. And again, a lot of the work that we're doing is moving more towards problem-based, actually significantly more towards problem-based in efforts to address that. So some of those measurements within that test itself are indicators that we're going to be looking at very closely as far as progress and toward these goals.
So it's broken down enough that you know what's going to be useful and what is not significant for us in terms of assessment. And then as we are, because obviously as we move ahead with a math curriculum, we won't have CMT scores to be using to gauge how we're doing. I don't know if I've actually heard a definitive statement. Are we in fact creating our own assessment, and have we weighed if that's best offered at the end of the grade to give that teacher feedback, or at the beginning of the next grade to know what's been retained and what has to be improved?
Just as a point of clarification, are you talking about end of grade test?
Right.
Or CMT.
Not CMT. I'm talking about something because we're going to...
Like an exit test at grade?
This curriculum would be rolled out when? It'd be rolled out now, and yet we're not going to have a CMT that's evaluating. I mean, to me, these standards are above and beyond CMT. So if we're trying to get feedback on what component of the third grade curriculum is going well, et cetera, is there going to be some type of self-made assessment for that at the end of third grade, which we could also use to compare across schools?
Right. Currently, what we have in place is the Connecticut Mastery for the next 2 years, and we also have our Blue Ribbon scores that we can use. And that's right, as well as the fluency tests. We also have end-of-unit assessments that teachers are looking at, which means every single unit there's are two types of tests. One is a skill-based test, and another is a performance test.
Yep.
And the performance really is looking at student understanding, and the skills is much more of a traditional approach. It's a percentage grade on a specific test, 9 out of 10 correct kind of thing. And so those are being used as well.
That answers my question. Okay. The professional development days, obviously the two from the district, will those ever involve schools getting together?
They often do.
Okay. Because obviously if they're sharing practices with that, going through my list, when the math specialist is, if a student is identified at the start of the year as having, fallen down on certain skills, what is that student usually pulled away from? What aspect of instruction are they then not getting while they're meeting with the math specialist?
Not art, music, and PE.
Okay.
Or recess, or lunch. It is a core academic area, and those are the facts at the elementary school. We try to protect the arts. We know that there's only so many minutes in a day, so we have language arts, math, social studies, and science to choose from.
Okay.
But we'd like to think that it's a pull-out so that we can accelerate them, so that they can again join the accessing the regular curriculum at grade level.
Right.
So it's time worth away, well spent away from the regular curriculum.
Just two more questions. What you were describing about the differentiation and the pulling down of certain grade 6 skills down to the lower levels, I assume that then keeps the math curriculum where that testing at the end of 5th grade and certain 6th grade students are in fact accelerated to 7th grade math, that this works well with keeping that model in place, or is that just going to be part of the middle school curriculum review?
Actually, I'm not sure I understand the question either. Could you clarify?
At present, certain 5th graders will be tested at the end of 5th grade, and based on their results as well as other components of their academic profile, they are there's grade level, 6th grade level math, there's the pre-algebra, I'm not getting the name right, and then there are those who go to 7th grade math. Is this keeping that pattern? Is that still working with the middle school? Okay. Last question is, I know certain elementary schools have played at various points with actually doing grouping within 5th grade. They've tried it, moved away from it. I assume that's on a school-by-school basis. Has that been talked about as being standardized, or as something that might be played with this?
Just in 5th grade?
That's the only place I've heard of it, but I don't claim to know all 11 schools.
Just to clarify, you mean like a departmentalization of 5th grade? So there's one math teacher, 2 literacy teachers, one social studies, one science? No. Okay.
In talking to 5th grade teachers, I have heard of a practice at some point in time where when it came to the math instructional hour of the day, there would be classroom changing, so that they're all teaching math, but it would be grouped.
We did address that through our revision process, and the options on the table for all schools would be It's all under the spirit of differentiation.
Right.
Okay? So we want to be able to meet all student needs. And based on pre- and post-assessments, we want to be able to fluidly address groups of students' needs, whether it is in two formats. One, within a classroom, where there are now groups of students based on the achievement on a pretest, or two, the distribution of students across a grade level. So schools have the option of doing within a classroom or across a grade level based on a pre and post within a unit. And it's during the skill set part of the unit, as opposed to the conceptual understanding, because conceptual understanding is where you benefit most from being with other thinking.
Right.
So we can share our thinking around math, that just because you aced the pretest doesn't mean you have don't have great thinking around math. So it's around that skill set part of the unit where we would encourage teachers to pre and post and then differentiate based on those results, whether it's within the classroom or across the grade level.
So that's left up to the schools.
Is there any public, just a question?
Really quick.
Okay.
First of all, I never got to say thank you. You guys have done an amazing job. I know how hard you've worked, and I know how much you believe in what you're doing. I think our board is asking amazing questions, but I get the feeling that we don't have all the answers. I think what Mrs. Brand asked for is something that we should definitely get, which is we should get the results from the pilot program. I think what Mr. Dwyer is saying is that if this curriculum does go beyond the core, that it should be stated and it should be very specific so that there is no question about what we expect them to learn. I know you cited that multiplication problem, but basically, why can't we say we expect by this grade that you have your times tables 12 by 12, down? I think that makes the curriculum that much stronger. And then finally, I think, Mr. Fadabine's comments about the community and what we expect, and that we should aim higher. And for me personally, I still believe that we haven't answered all those questions yet. So I'd like to make a motion to delay this vote for 2 months so that we can get those results of the pilot test, we can maybe get some strengthening of the curriculum and some specifics, and we can get some parent buy-in to some of the things that need to be worked on. I have a second.
Is there a second? Okay, is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to the public. No, there is. You have to raise your hands, guys. Mr. Fadamy.
I just inquire as to the motivation for 2 months instead of a shorter period of time.
Microphone.
I just inquire as to the motivation of why 2 months postponement instead of a shorter period of time.
I'm not opposed to a shorter period of time. I thought 2 months would also give them the ample time to do it correctly. I don't want anyone to have to speed through it. I want them to be able to feel like they had the time to do it right. But if we want to, if this board feels like a shorter period of time, a month, that's good with me too.
Mrs. Brand, and then Mr. Carey and Mr. Dwyer.
Yeah, this one's a little bit different than I think what we've seen in the past in terms of curriculum, at least I as a board member have seen, in that I don't really have a base which I'm leaping from. I would have felt better, as Mr. Liu pointed out, with a test or some results since we've been doing the research. Not saying we are shooting for a goal, but we know we will achieve those goals, that this is proven. And that's my concern with this, is that we don't know that, and that's taking quite a leap. And be honest with you, I'm not comfortable with that at this time. And if I felt, as Mr. Fadapine said, and also Mr. Dwyer, that we had some of those other elements, I would feel much better about approving it.
Mr. Carey?
So, through the chair to either Mr. Liu, Mr. Fadabine, or both, I've heard concerns this evening from board members that they feel we're deficient in terms of scoring with our current curriculum. So, I guess my comment is I'm not sure how delaying the evolution of our curriculum is going to help us to get past that perceived problem. But more so to this motion, how or what would you like to see, in addition to what's already in this new curriculum, during that, added to the curriculum during that deferral period.
Mr. Liu or Mr. Fattabine, do you want to respond?
Yeah, well, I think I started to say some of those before. I'd like to see the pilot program results. I think it would, I don't think that would be 100%, and I could understand things, but if we could see that there was definite growth and there was some kind of pattern to where this was going, I think it would show a lot towards that this was the right thing, and I'm actually kind of surprised that we haven't seen it so far. In terms of what else, I think what Mr. Dwyer said was very right on in that, there's been a lot of talk about Common Core, but we want to go beyond Common Core. And if you believe that this particular curriculum does do that, then I think we need to show it very specifically so that there's no doubt to the teachers, to the board, to the parents about where we're shooting for, where we're going to go, where we're shooting for that is above Common Core, and so that we can understand where we fit as we're going along. And then thirdly, what Mr. Fattabine had said, which was, I do believe that there are still some questions. I'm getting closer. I thought there were some very good answers tonight, but I think there are questions. And I think, unfortunately, if parents and people who have experience in math have been brought in earlier, we might not necessarily be here right now, but I think anything, how could it hurt to slow it down, to sharpen it? I don't see how it could hurt. It's not going to make it any less, our scores any less. If anything, it could only improve. So I think when you're dealing with something this important, and I think I've heard a lot of board members say that our scores are not fantastic, why not? Why not put it off so that we can get some of the answers that we believe we need?
Madam Chair, I believe I still have the floor.
Yes, you do.
Thank you.
I did believe we offered Mr. Fattabine an offer to respond.
Sure.
I'd like to respond as well. I think that you really have independent things going on. One is the test scores. The test scores are sort of independent of the curriculum to the extent that you can have an excellent curriculum, but if you can't deliver it, you're still going to get crappy test scores. So the question of whether the delivery of the curriculum was one, but right now what's in front of us is just the curriculum. So we have to assume that whatever curriculum we implement is going to be delivered adequately. So to that extent, well, how they affect test scores, I'm not certain. But our job tonight is to think about the curriculum and what's appropriate for Fairfield. And that gets to the second part of the question, is what do I would expect? Well, I would expect, in a sense, that the curriculum is a reflection of the community, and it's what they want. I have heard certain comments of what people want and what people believe there is. There was a discussion or some comments made as to how this curriculum exceeds the core standards. And I think what would be helpful to me, if the perception and the belief is that the public wants something higher and above the core standards that were indicated, and that's what the community wants, and we want to try and deliver what the community wants, then I need some sort of list or explanation from within these documents, what language within these curriculum documents has math concepts or math instruction that is not within the core curriculum and that couldn't be put in some broad category of the core curriculum. A lot of these categories are very broad as far as math concepts. So you have multiplication, division, you have fractions, you have geometry, you have certain problem-solving aspects, you have certain problems with volume and area and perimeter. All those are in there, but what concepts in these documents are being delivered if the public is perceived to want those concepts above and above that is not in this, can be categorized in these core curriculum? I'd like to know that. I myself didn't see any major core math concepts that are being delivered that are not addressed in some fashion in the core curriculum. And if there are there, I'd like to at least know those. So those are the comments I have with respect to what I would be looking for.
Thank you.
in any type of-
I just want to comment procedurally. First of all, we haven't heard from the public, so I just want to let you know it's 9 o'clock. I know there are a lot of people here that want to speak on the issue. There might be some people that are members of the community that want to support this curriculum. There might be some that do not. So I just want to make sure at a reasonable hour we can get to hear from them.
Back to...
A point of order, Madam Chair. A point of order. The motion's out of order. Motion to postpone is to postpone within the stated agenda. That means it would be taken up at the end of the meeting rather than the beginning of the meeting. So the motion to postpone for 2 months is a motion out of order.
Motion also to kill the item.
I didn't hear your...
I'd like a motion on my point of order, or a ruling on my point of order.
It's a motion, the motion to postpone will simply kill this curriculum item. You cannot postpone for 2 months.
Why can't we postpone to a date certain, let's say, then in June?
There's no such motion.
Well, then, why can't we then just kill it and bring it back in 2 months, which is the same thing? I mean, if there's a will, there's a way. I mean, you can also stand behind the rules and say, I can't do it, or we can say, hey, let's kill it. We're going to put it back on the agenda again. And I would be more than happy to make that motion right after we kill it and say, I want it back on the agenda. Boy Scouts honor.
Wait a minute, there's a point of order on the table. We need to answer Mr. Covertino's point of order.
What's the authority for that?
So rule it, it's out of order, and then just move on with that.
I'd like a clarification of why a motion to postpone is not in order for this.
2 months.
You can only make a motion to postpone to the next regular meeting. You can't postpone out 2 months.
Well, then,
Mr. Convertito's
let me rescind my, my motion and say, can I make a motion to postpone to the next regular meeting?
Point of order. Motion to postpone to next regular meeting is out of order. Motion to postpone may only be used to move it within the stated agenda before us today. The correct motion would be to lay the motion on the table, at which point it would have to be taken up at the next regular business meeting from the table. If it's not taken up, the motion dies and cannot reappear on our agenda for the next following year.
You are correct, Mr. Convertito. I concur.
So it's a motion to table.
Motion to table.
Is there a second? Mrs. Brand. The motion is to table this item to the next meeting. Mr. Carey.
So I'm going to try one more time through the chair to Mr. Fadveen and Mr. Liu. I'm a pretty facts and statistical-based guy. So what I haven't heard to help me decide whether this motion is something that I would support is what is not in this curriculum right now that you feel could be put in this curriculum by our next meeting. What material changes do you want to see that would persuade
Mr. Carey,
me?
I think that question was asked and answered. They said what they were looking for. They said where they wanted to go with it, and I don't want to revisit it.
I would disagree, Madam Chair.
Many times there are questions that are asked, and you don't get complete information, but you still have to make a decision. You can't wait for every possible conceivable question to be answered. I am prepared to vote tonight on this curriculum because many of my questions aren't so much related to this particular curriculum, but on every curriculum and every action, should we be setting ourselves a standard to be in the top quartile and not in the bottom quartile? And the answer to that question is not a 1, 2, 3, or 4 month answer. So I'm prepared to vote tonight, and I'm hoping my colleagues are ready to vote tonight as well.
I'll recognize Mrs. Gerber.
I guess my only question is, what, through the chair to Dr. Title, what, do you see anything problematic in tabling this?
I have this on the agenda, along with the chair, because I think that this should be voted on. These teachers, many of whom are sitting out here, have done incredible work over a period of time. The professional staff in whom you entrust to do this work has given you a document. You've heard. We have answered almost everything you can possibly think of for the last month on this issue. There may be additional information. We can keep going on that. But I think it's time to send a signal that this is a direction we want to move in with math. We need to send a clear message to our teachers that their work on this is ready to go and that the board is behind them on this. And I think, delaying this for a month and then who knows how much longer after that, because you can just keep going with it as we've seen with other things, I think it sends completely the wrong message to our professional staff that's worked so hard on this. And, you know, there's always another question someone can ask. I would really urge the board to support this curriculum and vote on it tonight, so we can get moving on getting ready to implement this next year, because we're frozen. If the message seems to be, we're not sure we want to go with this, there's a lot of work to be done between now and the fall to get this ready. Because there's no assurance you postpone this and do it in a month that it's going to get approved in a month. We really have to stop. And we need to keep moving forward. And in my view, I would like to see it approved tonight. Obviously, it's up to you. We've got a lot of people out here that want to tell you that, tell you about it. I think at some point we have to trust the professional staff, not just these fine folks over here who've done a remarkable job of putting so many hours into answering every question you've had about this. But all the work these people have done, I think it's time to move forward on this matter. And
on that point,
so that's my take on it, but obviously this board's postponed things before, and we'll
on that
up to you.
point, can we just see, would the members of the staff who have worked on this, just if you wouldn't mind just rising, if you're here in support of the staff, and just so we have some recognition of how many people actually went into this. Please refrain from applause, but I do want to thank you for your work on this. I'm going to go to public comment. They've been waiting since 7 o'clock.
Madam Chair, can we call the question?
There's a call a question. Is there a second? It's non-debatable. All in favor of calling the question? We will go to public comment. On the amendment to postpone. You may come speak on whether or not the board should postpone this item. Please come to the microphone, state your name and address. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Bessie Dulles, and I have a child. I think the mic's on. Hello? Can you hear
Time
me?
out for 1 minute. If you're planning on speaking, you need to come to the microphone right now and line up behind the room. If you're not standing at the end of the line, we won't be able to hear from you. And only on the motion to postpone.
Okay, would you like me just to state my opinion as
If
to
you
where...
don't think it should be postponed, you should also be at the microphone.
Okay, I would like to support the postponement of this decision. I have a number of questions that were still not answered tonight, and basically most of these questions were posed. The number one question I have is basically I have a copy of the new proposed curriculum and the old curriculum, and I had great difficulty understanding what's the difference between what we currently have in place and what the proposed curriculum is. There's no summary or any kind of document that was prepared that outlined the differences. I personally have difficulty understanding why the current curriculum is better, how it's going to improve the CMT scores, and in which area basically we have modified the curriculum. I have a number of issues with the curriculum. Some of those questions were asked tonight and we didn't get adequate answers. Is this curriculum internationally benchmarked? Are we going to have one unified textbook across the schools in Fairfield? What kind of professional developments are the teacher going to get to ensure that the curriculum is properly developed in the classroom and properly instructed? All of these questions were asked, but we didn't receive any kind of proper answers. I also would like to thank Mr. Perry Lou, Mrs. Brandt, and Mr. Fatibin for acknowledgement that we voted for them, and you guys are here to represent the desires of the community, and the majority of the community would like to get more time to review this curriculum and to ensure that this is something that is appropriate for our kids. It took 7 years to get to this point, and most likely it's going to take another 7 years before we review this curriculum again. So we want to make sure that we have the right curriculum in place. In 2 or 3 weeks, postponement is not going to be that crucial. Thank you.
Good evening, Nadine Izet. We accept that the Common Core, for the postponement of the curriculum. We accept that the Common Core is a step in the right direction, with fewer strands tonight and deeper instruction in context, but the curriculum has 4 components: a framework, in which case Common Core, methods for instruction, materials used for teaching and training and assessment. Each of these 4 components is essential for effective learning. Today we only see one new component, which is a Common Core. We're still teaching with old resources, with old assessments and old delivery, all based on constructivist math. Algorithms are not taught to mastery. Long division has moved to 6th grade, which is, we are moving backwards there. So we would like you to review this curriculum and make sure that it fulfills our kids' needs and also that our kids can compete in an international market. Thank you.
Tricia Donovan, I'm for postponement because I don't feel we've adequately answered the question on resources. And while we say that there's no scientific data supporting the Singapore math method, I think that if you look at the country of Singapore themselves, which this method is based on, they've pulled themselves from the bottom of the rankings to the top of the rankings in international testing. And while Common Core may be a step in the right direction to improving Fairfield's math education, these same resources that we are using have failed us over the last 7 years. And while you have indicated your preference to wait for new resources to be published in 1 to 2 years' time, that already takes us partway, almost halfway through the curriculum cycle. Districts around us have already moved to other resources that align to Common Core, such as Singapore Math. We know that New Haven has moved in that direction, Westport has moved in that direction, and I've also spoken with Scarsdale, New York, a top performer in the country that has been using Singapore since 2008. And in my conversations with these districts, they have repeatedly pointed to the fact that this resource supports a deeper understanding of math concepts, challenges high learners, and responds to students with low literacy, as the text has very little text and a lot of pictorial support. So this would answer any questions people might have about McKinley not being able to keep up. New Haven has 20% of their population is ELL. And they said that they have seen, and I don't believe this is anecdotal, I spoke with Ken Matthews, an 18% increase in student achievement in the first year. They said that it also deepened the teacher's understanding of math and how to translate that to students. So if we have a resource that is proven to be successful, why wait and see what publishers come up with?
Hi, I'm Jossie Jandovitz, Burr parent. I wasn't planning on speaking because I didn't think we'd be talking about a delay. So I don't have anything prepared, but I am not in favor of delaying the vote. I feel that what we are hearing from other parents, the concerns are around the resources that are certainly outdated. I've had a chance to meet with the members of the public school system, Anna and Walter, and understanding that, yes, we need new implementation guides, and yes, we need new resources. How can we move forward with those things until we have a curriculum in place? I do not want to see delay. I don't want to be settling for what we currently have. I'd like to see us move forward with standards that have been approved and accepted by many other states, and I think that we certainly do have, I believe, we have plenty of room for differentiation with the curriculum, the new curriculum. And I certainly believe we can address the children that are not meeting the standard and those that are able to exceed. So I would just urge the board to vote so that we can start moving forward. Thank you.
Christine Vitale, 254 Vernon Hill Road. I have a 5th grader at Dwight, so she has been, I guess, part of the pilot program. I can't say enough about her reaction to math. And around the dinner table, I am not a math person, my husband is, and to hear my husband, my freshman in high school, and my 5th grader talk about geometry, which my 5th grader is learning and my 9th grader is learning, I think speaks to this curriculum and looking at the bigger picture and not getting tied down to multiplication tables, which everyone's going to learn, and if they don't learn it, they're going to use their computer. I sat through the last meeting where we talked about this for 2 hours. I thank the staff for their work, and I really hope you vote tonight.
Hi, my name's Scott Mazurowski. I'm a math science resource teacher over at McKinley, and I stand here with my fellow colleagues, math science teachers from the 10 other elementary schools, and we are opposed to the delay this evening. I know we've talked a lot about the work that's been done with this curriculum, thanks to Mr. Wakeman. Just a couple of reasons why, and I know we've talked about this, and I'll make this very brief. One of the most important things I think we've seen as teachers is the discussion behind mathematics. You know, I thought back to my 5th grade, classroom, and I was never asked to discuss and defend my mathematics, and that's what's happening in our classrooms right now. And to see the growth of the students, it's pretty amazing to listen to some of the discussions that are taking place, third grade through fifth grade. Someone had mentioned earlier the discussion that's taking place between teachers. It's no longer what page are you on. It's more concepts and understanding concepts. And I guess I can only speak for myself. I was taught one way, and it was one way or the highway. And as I've moved into this position and moved into Fairfield, math has really opened up even more for me. The strategies that students, that we're teaching the students, it's making students more confident and more enthusiastic. So again, hopefully there is not a delay tonight, and we make a vote this evening. So thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Raina Holinsky. I am a fourth grade teacher at Dwight Elementary. I'm a little bit nervous, you know. The balanced math instructional model eliminates that one-size-fits-all approach to math. Each student is given the opportunity to solve problems in a variety of strategies, inquire, ask questions, share their ideas, learn from others' ideas, and ultimately find the best way that works for them. The workshop model allows students to move away from that cookie-cutter math and take ownership of conceptual understanding, which can be built upon and enriched, rather than be forced to memorize a skill and apply it this way. Each child learns differently, and the workshop model supports that.
Hi, Debbie Jackson, principal of North Stratfield School. We've all written to you as the board, so you know our feelings already. I speak on behalf of all my elementary colleagues, all elementary principals, and I can tell you that we don't agree on everything. Our meetings are a testament of that on behalf of children. However, we 100% are unanimous in our belief that this is the right program to present. I really implore you to make a decision tonight. I would also like to tell you that I live in the land of children, so I know several of you have asked a little bit about our assessments. Beyond all the assessments that you can read in all of the books, I go into classrooms every day, and I can absolutely tell you that the children understand their math with this because they can explain their thinking. I could always look at a test before, but they can sit down with me and they can tell me how they arrived at that answer. I can also give you an example of professional development. And as Mrs. Kataya Leonard told you, we do have time devoted on Tuesday afternoons to do professional development, but I happened to see it in action today. We implemented a new fourth grade unit in our proposed program just this week. And I went into the library, and our math and science teacher, who's sitting right over there, not only did she prepare the teachers last Tuesday for what was coming, but she was modeling the lesson in our library media center with every child in fourth grade. That's the best professional development that I have ever seen since I've been a principal. So I hope you will make a decision tonight. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kathleen Kane. I'm a fourth grade teacher at North Stratfield, and I just have a few statements about the balanced math instructional model. In the 2 years that I've been teaching this instructional model, I feel that it's the similar structure of the math workshop to our existing reading and writing workshops. Helps to engage all students by providing a consistent learning environment. Also, the work with investigations or authentic activities build on what students already know and are presented in the context of situations that occur in students' daily lives. The students are able to apply the computational strategies they have learned and add to them by thinking more flexibly and therefore more efficiently. This also presents a magnificent opportunity for differentiation. And I feel that each student is allowed to begin at their own level of their number sense or entry point into a mathematical concept. And lastly, I've seen the student-centered model allow for the excitement of students to develop understanding through their own reasoning and their strategies that they share with their peers. It's really great. So I hope you vote on it today. Thank you.
Hi, Matt Underko, fifth grade teacher, North Stratfield.
And from my experiences this year, this workshop model is student-centered, and through collaborative work and discourse, it allows for a tremendous amount of self-discovery. It encourages a variety of approaches to problem solving using several different strategies, and I've seen students taking accountability for their work and having to justify and defend their reasoning, their mathematical reasoning, on a day-in and day-out basis. So I hope you vote on this tonight. Thank you.
My name is Ryan Carroll. I teach 5th grade at Dwight, and I went through this school system. When I sat in 5th grade 20 years ago at Sherman School, I hated math class. It was boring. My students now, if we have to miss math class because we go on a field trip or something like that, they hate to miss math class. That's remarkable. If you don't vote tonight, I worry that that feeling is going to go away. So please, I urge you to vote tonight.
Hi, my name is John Donovan. I have 3 kids in the public school system. I support the delay. I support what Mr. Liu said earlier. I think the teachers are doing a phenomenal job. Over the past 7 years, I've certainly seen my kids, have a much better time with math. They're certainly improving, but the bottom line is the numbers. Bottom 25% in every single grade. And I mean, maybe that's something that could be answered over the next month, but when you look at that comparison and you look at it as an index against the state, it doesn't seem that we're improving. So I think we're doing as good a job as we can with materials, but how do you go through? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. It seems like we're doing the same thing. I mean, improvements certainly, but much the same thing. Thank you.
Mary Hogue, 165 Stonewall Lane. I don't endorse delaying only because I think what everyone's been saying is that the scores show that we need to improve. Delaying, especially even just for a month after waiting 3 years working on this, I don't really see substantially how we're going to do anything other than either really delay, which would not do our students and our district any good, or we'll be back where we are right now, so we haven't gained anything. I think it's important that we understand that we're trying to make a positive change. It sounds like, not being the expert, that we are increasing the rigor. We are expecting more from our students. We're expecting more from our staff. I hope that we can build, and I believe that there are components to build in parent component on this as well, which I think will then build a bigger, stronger relationship throughout every component that can be part of the students' and experience. So I think that maybe 5 years is too long, and I think we don't necessarily wait from now until 5 years to do some tweaking and some improvements. Everything can always be better. I hope that we can get started on improving our math curriculum as quickly as possible and actually implement this. I think the resources are an issue. I think that's appropriate to be concerned about that, but we're not voting on that. We're voting on the curriculum. I think we do need to be concerned about that, and I hope you'll pay attention to that. Thank you.
Good evening, G. Alfred Dunn. I was at loggerheads with math before I was conceived, so therefore you know my standing. There's another statement, haste makes waste. It is true that a good many of us are in a hurry. However, at the last meeting, one of the school board members who sits here tonight brought up a profound question. That gentleman wanted to know what was the difference between the system that wanted to be brought in and the system we already had. What did I hear? Some situation that was, quote, akin to spiral, and to me it was common sense spiraling out into the atmosphere. Then there was some sort of other funny number called core whatever. Ladies and gentlemen, all of that has to be cast aside. Another board member came up with the multiplication table. Here, too, someone floated off into space without a string. anybody with any common sense in their heads realize that the multiplication table is the core of our math. When you start with that, you got it. I was surprised when my daughter matriculated this system and found that the multiplication table wasn't given until middle school.
It's time, Mr. Dunn. Thank you very much for your comments.
Quite welcome.
I'm opposed to a delay in the vote
Just
tonight.
state your name for the
My
record,
name's
Ms.
Kathleen Rupert. I am I've been a fifth grade teacher. I'm the math science teacher at Jennings and a parent of fifth and seventh grader. And I just want to say that as a teacher, I've seen students become so much more flexible in their mathematical thinking. I just see them exploring so many different strategies and finding the one that works for them, that it's really exciting to watch and be in the classroom with kids as they are engaging in mathematics. The problem-solving aspect of it is incredible. I love watching the kids solve problems and then explain and justify their thinking. And I think that this is a curriculum that should have our support. And I'm pleased to be both the math science teacher and a teacher and a parent of students who have this curriculum.
Good evening. Paul Tueso, principal at Riverfield. I reached out to our PTA leadership and asked them what the word on the street about the math curriculum was. I'd like to read the response from Amy Crawford, our PTA president. As for the math curriculum, I know a few Mill Hill parents were upset about not being included in the process and had some questions about the rigor of the proposal. That said, the feedback from the Riverfield parents who attended the Board of Ed meeting is that there is a sense of confidence that the district is moving in the right direction and that the main concern is supporting our teachers, as this is a new way of not only learning but teaching as well. I want to also support what Dr. Jackson, Mrs. Jackson said about what's going on in classrooms. And Riverfield School, math time in grades 3, 4, and 5 is about students talking, sharing their thinking, learning from one another, and demonstrating concepts and applications, including basic math facts, that I've never seen before. It would be a shame to postpone your vote, and I hope you vote in the affirmative when you do. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion to postpone, please raise your hand. Mr. Liu, Mr. Fattabine, and Mrs. Brand, all opposed. The motion, any abstentions? The motion to table, thank you, I apologize. The motion fails. We're back to the main motion.
Move to call the question, Madam Chair.
Is there a second? Second. Is there, it's non-debatable. All in favor of calling the question? Okay. All in favor of supporting this motion, please signify by raising your hand. Oh, no, I don't have to. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, I didn't go to the public. On the main motion, would anyone like to speak on approving the main motion for the math curriculum this evening? Okay. We're back to the board, I'm sorry. All in favor of approving the math curriculum, please signify by raising your hand. Voting in favor, Mrs. Kennelly, Mr. Convertito, Mrs. Gerber, Mrs. Iacono, Mr. Dwyer, Mr. Fattabine, and Mr. Carey. Opposed, Mr. Liu and Mrs. Brand. No abstentions. The motion carries. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is student discipline. There is a motion that the Board of Education approve policy 5119, student discipline. Is there a second? I mean, is there a motion? Sorry, I'm a little punch-happy. Moved by Mr. Convertito, second by Mrs. Yes.
I want a clarification of the point of order as how this got out of committee, and maybe Jennifer can or Mrs. You can clarify. Did this move out of committee?
Oh, I apologize. I'm trying to find the paperwork. I'm sorry, the question again?
My question is, I'm not sure that I don't have a recollection of, well, this was referred to committee in the last board meeting. And during the committee meeting, we discussed it and had various issues with respect to some of the language, and we actually had some interest in seeking out a legal opinion or some legal insight as to what some of the aspects or some of the language ramifications might be. So when I left that meeting, was of the belief that it didn't get moved out of committee. So my query as a point of order is procedurally, how is this back on the agenda when it didn't, in my understanding, move out of committee?
Having not been at the meeting, I'll defer to the chair.
It absolutely was vague. My understanding had been that because we received the answers the next day, which you should have received an email about, Mr. Fadby, you and myself did, that the language changes were implemented, the substantive ones you got responses to and were recommended against, and therefore it was moving on. You're absolutely right, it was vague, and there were only the two of us. But I hadn't been opposed to it being on the agenda because we had the information that we requested.
Honestly, that communication did not come to the email I usually receive board communication with, so honestly, I did not see that email. So I don't know what that opinion was. You say the opinion...
I checked with Mrs., I apologize, I asked Ms. Karen Park specifically if you had received it as well, and I thought that you had.
I regularly check my, if it went to the email that I sent some information to her.
I did send it to the email on the website. That's the only email I had for you, so if you didn't check your Fairfield...
No, I did not. All right. Well, I had sent you some information you had wanted from me with my email that I typically receive board comments to, so if you didn't use that email, I would not have seen it. So I apologize for not seeing that, but I didn't, and I was unaware of what the content was.
Right.
So I cannot necessarily address that other than you implied that we had a legal issue, which I think I know the answer to now because I did some research. You implied that you didn't get a legal answer, but you got an advisor that you wouldn't recommend it, implying that it's legal, but you don't recommend it.
We did get the legal answer, and so the email that I had read from Ms. Sparks had your wording and then the explanation of why a change was or was not made, which came from the legal advice we received. But obviously you haven't seen any of that responses.
And our packet tonight included the language, as I understand it, from the prior proposals to amend before it went to the committee. So as my understanding tonight, the proposals are such that there is no modification whatsoever in...
I think Karen made changes. Yeah.
Couldn't find them.
They should be in here.
But all right.
Yes.
But the substantive changes...
So basically what happened was, we took those Karen took those suggestions. Actually, Don Houston's sitting in the back for another reason, so he's right there. Took the proposals, some of which were somewhat technical cleanup types of things, others that were not, and got feedback from our lawyer on it, and then the changes that the lawyer recommended are in here, and the ones that he didn't recommend are not in here. That's the process we followed. I mean, this thing has been at the committee, 2 readings at the board, back to committee, now it's back to the board. I don't know how much more we can do with this one.
Well, I think it can be resolved at the committee level, which was my intent and my belief that that's what was going to happen.
Right.
That's where I thought it would have been resolved. It wasn't resolved at the committee meeting. The understanding when we left the committee was that we were going to seek legal clarification, go back to committee, and revise the language more specifically. The whole intent of going to committee is such that we can have
I'm going to issue a ruling on your point of order. Based on the fact that this has clearly not come out of policy with everybody on the same page, I'm remanding it back to policy committee. Please take a vote at your next policy committee when this is ready to come back on the agenda.
Good.
Next item.
Do it next year.
New business. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education establish Thursday, June 21st, 2012 at 6 p.m. as the date and time of graduation for Fairfield Ludlow High School and Fairfield Ward High School class of 2012. Moved by Mrs. Brand, seconded by Mrs. Kennelly. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, is there any discussion on this item for the public? Back to the board. All in favor of these dates for high school graduation, please signify by raising your hand. That's all in favor. Everybody's in the room. Okay. The next item on the agenda is a discussion of the Fairfield Public Schools food service program. I will defer to enclosure number 7.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
given the hour is now 20 to 10, and we still have an executive session to issue, and I need to catch an 11:30 train to Baltimore, I would make a motion that we table this issue till the next regular business meeting.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mrs. Gerber. All in favor of tabling this item to the next board meeting, given the hour and the fact that we have an executive session to follow? All in favor?
Excuse me, point of order.
Right.
Are we tabling this to the next meeting, but didn't we just say that we couldn't do that?
No, you can table, but only to the next, for one meeting.
The motion failed. It was 3 in favor and...
Oh.
No,
yeah.
We didn't vote.
Oh, we didn't vote. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, where are we?
All in favor of postponing?
All in favor of...
Tabling to the next meeting. Table to the next meeting.
That makes your point about the lateness, right? Tabling, right, tabling.
All in favor of tabling this item to the next meeting. Mr. Convertito, Mrs. Gerber, Mrs. Iacono, Mr. Dwyer, Mr. Fattabine, and Mr. Carey. Motion, those opposed? Mrs. Kennelly, Mr. Liu, Mrs. Brand, no abstentions, the motion carries. We will take this item up. I'm sorry, Mrs. Fitzpatrick.
This will be old business, so can I assume it comes at the front of the agenda?
Yeah, old business items go on in the order in which they were previously on the agenda, according to Robert's rules, so this will move up into the old business category. So it'll be earlier.
The next item on our agenda, I apologize. I'm sorry. It's been a long night for me, too. Public comments and petitions, the rules of which are stated on our agenda. Please come to the microphone, state your name for the record.
J. Alfred Dunn. Madam Chairman, I realize I am fading age-wise, but the vote concerning the mathematical situation, was it a vote on the hiatus that was asked for, or was it a vote on the main motion?
We did both.
We did.
Yes, sir, we did. And I completely understand it has nothing to do with your age.
Thank you. That means that I'm not fading as fast as I thought.
No, but I definitely am fading.
However, again, I don't know when you can do it, but sometime in the future, the math situation is not going to get any better. And some of us sincerely believe that we have all explanations in a book, as was seen early this evening when something came up, the person stated that you didn't read it right, or the interpretation was incorrect, or it's all there. Confusion is not our agenda. So sooner or later, we're going to have to take everybody aboard, those that have worked on this situation for 10,000 years, and those that were just born this morning, and those who, like me, are in the winter of their years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. I know you're surprised to see me. Michelle McCabe, 1060 Merritt Street. I'm also the chair of Fuel for Learning Partnership, PTA Council Standing Committee. And I just wanted to say that I'm very disappointed that the food service is not on the agenda this evening as was planned. I know there are parents in the audience that are also disappointed that we're looking forward to a discussion about food service. I think on the one hand we have so much to celebrate and where we're going, but also I think that the fact that it is no longer a point of discussion is underlines the need for importance to be placed on this. I mean, this is part of your mission as a board to promote and protect the health of our students. It supports their academics in math and in other subjects. And the data that comes in daily just demonstrates how important it is for all of us to be focused on this issue as well as the educational piece of what we do. And I hope that this tabling does mean that it'll just be pushed to the next meeting.
It will.
And that we'll have an opportunity to really discuss it fully so that in June, when we have our full discussion of food service, we'll be prepared to give it the attention it deserves, just like we did with the math curriculum and other topics. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I will now entertain a motion that the, what? Oh, open board comment, I'm sorry. Mr. Liu.
Thank you. Dr. Title, can we see, even though we've passed the curriculum, which is good, can we see the results from the math piloting, please?
Yeah, we can share whatever we have on that. I mean, there's nothing to hide.
No, I understand that,
Yeah.
so it would be
We'd be
great if
happy-
we could see that.
Whatever information we have
Thank you.
with respect to the math pilot, we'd be happy to share with you. Not a problem.
Mrs. Brandt.
Yeah, it's actually relevant to what we're facing right now. We have a late night. I'd like to have policy review what we're doing at the board table in terms of our scheduled meetings. It's a schedule. We actually are resulting in having just about one meeting a month, and I think that's part of our problem and why it's running late into the night. We're not able to accomplish everything because it's really packed in. So I have noticed that we've, for whatever reason, started to cut back. Our policy still says 2. And I think that would help a great deal in us being able to cover our materials sufficiently. So I'd like to ask that policy take a look at that, if I might. If you want, I'll make a motion to do so, but
Sure, we can.
The handbook actually is addressing that, so in the course of discussing the handbook, that issue will be addressed.
All right,
And I
thank you
believe
very
for
much.
the next
Appreciate it.
couple months, we pretty much have, like, next month is 2 meetings, June's 2 meeting. We don't meet, we've never met in July. August, I think we only usually have one, we do only have one meet. It was, so really for the end of the year, I don't think it's an issue, but the handbook can address that. All right, I'd like the, motion that the Board of Education convene into executive session for the purpose of discussing pending claims and litigation. Moved by Mr. Dwyer, seconded by Mrs. Brand. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. The board's now in executive session. I would just ask that everyone leave the room. And we are going to just take a stretch break, if that's okay, because I can't see straight and my reading glasses are broken.